infections are requesting supplies beyond what their present circumstances require. And we talk to them and we tell them and we explain it, and for the most part they're good with it. We think we're right. It's very understandable that officials would seek to get the most they can get for their communities. But the fears of the shortages have led to inflated requests. We have some states and areas where they're just asking for far more. I mean, look, we had one state asking for 40,000 ventilators. 40,000. Think of it, 40,000. It's not possible. They won't need that many, and now they're admitting they don't need that many, but we're getting as many as we can to them. Again, nobody's ever seen anything like this in terms of ventilators, in terms of protective equipment, and uniforms and outfits. But it makes it more difficult for distributors to prioritize the real need, and it could intentionally, and you know, everybody has proper intentions, but they want to make sure they're 100%, and sometimes when they know they don't need it, they want it anyway. It gives them that extra feeling of satisfaction, but we just can't do that. It's not even possible to think about it. And that's why, and we're a backup. Remember, we're a backup. We're the greatest backup that ever existed for the states, especially when we start getting into the hospital building business and getting into the medical center building business. When you see we built many hospitals, numerous hospitals in some states and medical centers. That's why my administration's been requesting actual usage numbers directly from the states and hospitals to meet their needs, because we want to be ready when the brunt of it comes, which is coming quickly. You see it. You see it as sure as you can see it. And when the brunt of it comes, we want to be ready to hit the area that needs it. We don't want to have spent everything in one area and they don't need it there to anywhere near the extent. So let me be extremely clear about one point. We will move heaven and earth to safeguard our great American citizens. We will continue to use every power, every authority, every single resource we've got to keep our people healthy, safe, secure, and to get this thing over with. We want to finish this war. We have to get back to work. We have to open our country again. We have to open our country again. We don't want to be doing this for months and months and months. We're going to open our country again. This country wasn't meant for this. Few were. But we have to open our country again. I just spoke with the commissioners, leaders of, I would say, virtually all of the sports leagues. Rob Manfred, Commissioner of Baseball, Major League Baseball. Roger Goodell, Commissioner of the National Football League. Adam Silver, Commissioner of the National Basketball Association. Garrett Bettman, Commissioner of the National Hockey League. Jay Monahan, Commissioner of the PGA Tour. Kathy Engelbert, Commissioner of the Women's National Basketball Association. Dana White, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Vince McMahon, President of the WWE. Don Garber, Commissioner of Major League Soccer. Steve Phelps, President of NASCAR. Michael Wan, Commissioner of the LPGA. Roger Penske, founder and chairman Penske Corp. And Drew Fleming, president of the Breeders' Cup. And there are a couple of others on, and these are all the great leaders of sport, and they want to get back. They got to get back. They can't do this. The sports weren't designed for it. The whole concept of our nation wasn't designed for it. We're going to have to get back. We want to get back soon, very soon. For example, I have to say, we're using the Defense Production Act very powerfully. In some times directly, in many cases indirectly. Just the threat of it is usually enough. But FEMA and HHS have ordered 180 million, think of that, 180 million. Who ever heard of 180 million N95 masks? And we're working now with 3M to see whether or not that all works out, but we want them to help our country, and I think it's going to be okay. We're going to soon let you know, but we need the masks. We don't want other people getting it. That's why we're instituting a lot of Defense Production
will be
Act.
remembered as an expression of our national spirit.
You could call it retaliations because that's what it is. It's a retaliation. If people don't give us what we need for our people, we're going to be very tough, and we've been very tough. Usually we don't have to use it, but we've used it plenty. It's turning out more and more, unfortunately. And it works very well. Our supply chain logistics task force, led by Admiral John Polobchek, who's doing a fantastic job, will ensure they're distributed to the healthcare and critical infrastructure workers in the areas with the most pressing requirements. That's the 60 million masks that we're talking about, and the 180 million N95 masks. 180 million, who ever heard of 180 million masks? And this is an incredible thing. A lot of times when we have to stop playing this game, a governor wants 200 ventilators, and I say, no, we're going to send you 1,000. We think you need more than 200. And then the media meets with the governor, and they say, oh, you got more? Well, it's not enough. The president should have sent more. So he's asking for 200. We give him 1,000. They say, how's the president doing? He should have given more, because that's politics. That's politics, and that's unfortunate because we can't play that game. And that's one party doing it, and the other party's happy, but they're all really happy because they should have been doing this work themselves for a long period of time. Many of their cupboards were bare. With respect to the ventilators, FEMA and HHS continue to monitor the data on an hourly basis where provided by the states in order to most effectively target the distribution of supplies. We've been asking states to provide us with daily updates on the number of ventilators and their utilization rates, because some states have more ventilators than they need. They don't even like to admit it. They'll admit it when everything's over, but that doesn't help us very much. This data is vitally necessary so that we can ensure ventilators are getting to the right place at the right time. FEMA, HHS, DOD are developing resources within the next 24 hours. They will have a whole different set of criteria. Every day it's different criteria. Every day this horrible, invisible enemy changes a course. It changes course. If you were fighting the normal fight, you know what's happening. They hit one, they hit another, they hit another state, they hit areas that you didn't expect. But we're watching it and we're capturing it. Our goal is to stay several days ahead of the needs in each state, but we can only do that if the cities and states utilize real-time local knowledge to provide timely and precise data about actual usage. So we have to be able to do that. And if the state has ventilators, as an example, that they know they're not going to need, they should give them over, and we should move them with the other ones. We have now 10,000 in our pipeline, and stockpiled 10,000 close. And we're moving some into New York, so we're going to need some additional. We're moving some into New York City and state separately, and we're bringing them to the point where they'll need them. I can also report that at my direction, 1,000 military personnel are deploying to New York City to assist where they're needed the most. That's the hottest of all the hot spots. New Jersey is right there. It's right next to it. And I don't know if that's overflow, but New Jersey's, it's a great state, and it's a crowded state also, where you have people on top of people. It's always tough, but we're bringing some of the ventilators. We got some for New Jersey just yesterday, and we're going to bring them some more, including doctors. We're getting doctors, nurses, respiratory specialists, and other support workers. These are from the military. We're taking people now out of our military. We've been doing it, but now we're doing it on a larger basis, and I want to thank Secretary of Defense Esper, who will detail some of what we're doing tomorrow and Monday. As the situation in Washington State continues to stabilize, we're returning a 300-bed federal medical station to a different location, so where we need it, and we appreciate that. They won't be needing it, and we appreciate them letting us know we're going to move it to a different location. It was already built. Many governors initially made large requests for federal support for their states in anticipation of a greater number of cases, but the residents of Washington State have done a really good job of following the federal distancing guidelines. They really have. I'm also pleased to report that Oregon will be spending and sending. They're spending a lot of money because they really did stockpile well, and they're also sending 140 ventilators directly to New York, which we appreciate. And I want to thank the Vice President for the great work he's doing every day dealing with our nation's governors. Mike Pence has been working day and night on this, and we want to get it over. He's got to get a little more sleep than he's getting. He hasn't been getting very much, I will tell you that. And we're all in this together, and it's a beautiful thing to see how people are joining forces to help one another. They really are. In addition to our courageous doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers, I also want to thank the incredible food supply workers who are feeding our nation. I spoke just a little while ago to Senator Bozeman. You know Senator Bozeman, we all do. He's a great senator, he's a great person. We spoke just this morning and we discussed how important it is to keep our farmers and ranchers, processors, and distributors in our nation's prayers. And I want to thank the senator for the incredible job he's been doing. And a lot of the senators and congressmen and everybody's working very hard. My administration is working very aggressively to pioneer new medical countermeasures to treat and prevent infection. Working on a lot of things. We must utilize our nation's scientific brilliance to vanquish the virus. We have to vanquish the virus as quickly as we can, because we have a lot of things happening in this country and we have a great future, but we have to get back to work. This week, the FDA established the Coronavirus Treatment Accelerator Program, which is expediting the development of new antiviral and other therapies, and they're doing it on a very rapid basis, and I think we're having some very good results. We'll tell you about that. HHS continues to speed the development of therapies derived from human blood that have the potential to lessen the severity or shorten the length of the illness. And as you know, last Saturday, the FDA also gave emergency authorization for hydroxychloroquine, and the hydroxychloroquine is I hope it's going to be a very important answer. We're having some very good things happening with it, and we're going to be distributing it through the Strategic National Stockpile. It's going into the Strategic National Stockpile to treat certain patients, and we have millions and millions of doses of it, 29 million to be exact. In addition to that, we're making it, and we're also getting it from various other locations and countries. In one case, I called Prime Minister Modi of India this morning. They make large amounts of hydroxychloroquine, very large amounts, frankly. And I said they had a hold because, you know, they have 1.5 billion people and they think a lot of it. And I said I'd appreciate if they would release the amounts that we ordered, and they are giving it serious consideration. But they do India makes a lot of it. But we have already 29 million, if you look, I mean, it's a big number, 29 million doses. We've got millions of doses that are being made here, and many millions of doses that are made elsewhere that are being shipped here, and it will be arriving. We're just hearing really positive stories, and we're continuing to collect the data, but I'll just speak for myself. It's been out for a long time. It's a malaria drug. It's also a drug for lupus. And there's a study out that people with lupus aren't catching this horrible virus. They're not affected so much by it. Now, maybe that's correct. Maybe it's false. You're going to have to check it out. But there's a lot of very positive things happening with that. That's a game changer if that's the case. Obviously, we continue to work on the vaccines, but the vaccines have to be down the road by probably 14, 15, 16 months. We're doing great on the vaccines. I think Johnson & Johnson is leading, seems to be leading in terms of the studies, but we'll see what happens. But I feel good about that, but that's down the road. But tremendous promise with what's just been mentioned. In addition to that, Gilead Sciences has initiated a phase 3. That's down the line, meaning clinical studies of the drug remdesivir. Now, it's approximately 1,000 patients, which is a pretty good study. Other drugs are also being studied in patients, and this week Oracle, great company, donated a new web portal. Larry Ellison, amazing guy, and platform to the government to gather real-time data on how patients are responding to the various new treatments, and they have a very sophisticated site. We'll be learning a lot from Oracle, and thank you to them. We're also spending economic dollars like you wouldn't believe, and speeding economic relief to American workers, families, and businesses. Yesterday, the Small Business Administration launched the Paycheck Protection Program to help employees keep paying their workers. In 24 hours, the Small Business Administration and over 1,200 lending partners processed over 28,000 loans. It's so far ahead of schedule, and billions of dollars. It's worked out incredibly well, and I want to thank Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase and a lot of the big banks that have been involved, and a lot of the community banks. Community banks have really jumped on it, and it's so far going way ahead of schedule. The SBA also clarified that faith-based organizations, including houses of worship, are eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. That's great. As well as the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program that you're familiar with, on the same terms as every other applicant. If we run out of funding for the Employee Retention Program, I will immediately ask Congress for more money. This is money that's really going directly to the people that need it, the small businesses that need it, and the workers that need it. Finally, because when we open, we want to open strong with businesses that are going. Remember, we had the greatest economy in the world, and then one day we were told, you got to shut it down, stop it, tell everyone to stay home because of this horrible virus, and we did that. Now we did the right thing, but now we have to open. We have to open our country. Finally, I can report that as of today, the State Department has successfully coordinated the safe return of more than 40,000 Americans stuck abroad on over 400 flights from 75 countries. Many of those countries were terrific in helping us, and I appreciate that very much. Some of them I had to call the leaders of the country, most of whom I know. And once I did, they snapped like you wouldn't believe. They really helped us. Right? So I appreciate that. So we brought back 40,000 Americans who were literally stuck in some countries with no chance of getting out. We got them back. 400 flights, 75 countries. Think of that. And those countries, in almost every instance, had a big problem with the virus. I want to thank the American people, most of all, for the selfless sacrifices that they're making for our nation. I know it's not pleasant, although some people have said they've gotten to know their family better, and they love their family more than ever. That's a beautiful thing. They've actually gotten to know them. They're in the same house with their family for a long time. I guess it can also work the other way, perhaps, but we don't want to talk about that. And I want to encourage everyone to keep following our guidelines on slowing the spread. Sustaining this war effort is, and that's what it is, it's a war effort. Is the patriotic duty of every citizen. While we may be more physically distant for a time, we're closer together in the heart and in the spirit. And through this great national unity is happening. We're having a great unity developing that a lot of people didn't think would be possible to develop like this. And we will conquer the disease and restore our nation to its full and glorious might. And we're doing really well, and I'm very proud of everybody out there. We're very proud of you. It's something that nobody could have ever projected. been over 100 years that a thing like this has happened. And the problem with this one is the contagion. It's so contagious. Nobody's ever seen anything like that, where it's so contagious. You can be feet away and just talking to somebody and catch it. You can catch it. You know how long it can live on surfaces. So things that nobody even thought of, the level of contagion. So we're getting there. We're going to make sure that it's over soon. And just keep going. It's not going to be long. And thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to ask Dr. Hahn to speak. And he's been doing yeoman's work at the FDA. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to speak about hydroxychloroquine and the efforts around that. Just to preface, I'd like to echo what the President said about the American people and the resiliency and the just terrific work. Mitigation is such an important part of our fight against the COVID-19 virus. Last week, as the President said, we issued an emergency use authorization to allow the donated hydroxychloroquine to come into the country and enter the general circulation. We are prioritizing this drug to come in for clinical trials, also into general use for physicians, because as you know, physicians, based upon their interaction with the patients, their assessment of the risks and benefits, can write a prescription for hydroxychloroquine if they think it's appropriate for the patient. Being a physician, we do this all the time, and that assessment needs to be done between a patient and a doctor. And then the third portion is we wanted to make sure that these drugs are in the circulation, in the supply chain, so that people who have them or need them for the other indications, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, had them available. So that was the purpose of the emergency use authorization. One other thing I'd like to mention is that we on Friday stood up a formal convalescent plasma program. We have a great deal of enthusiasm for that. There are some reports that this is of benefit to patients in other countries who have had the COVID-19 virus. And what this means is taking plasma from patients who've had the virus and who have recovered, and transferring the immunity, the immunoglobulins, the immunity from that person to someone who's sick. And we're hopefully expanding that across the country. The Red Cross is involved in that program, and I think it shows a great promise. It needs to be studied like other things, but just like I said before, it provides hope. We don't want to provide false hope, but definitely hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to just take a couple of moments to talk a little bit about the public health aspects and how it relates to what the President just said about the need for us to begin to at least think about returning to some degree of normality. And that has to do with what's going to be happening as we end this week and we go into next week. You will be seeing, and we should not be surprised because the kinetics of how this virus works, is that we're going to be seeing that there are going to be deaths that are going to continue to go up. But as I mentioned to this group and to the general public multiple times, there really is a cascading of events where you have new cases, hospitalizations, intensive care, and deaths. So at the same time that we may be seeing an increase in deaths, we want to focus on the effect of mitigation is really the number of new cases. And that's what we're going to be thinking about and looking about. So we're going to pay close attention to that, and hopefully the kinds of mitigations that we're talking about are going to have the impact to allow us to begin to think about maybe changing a bit. So the question arises, is the mitigation working? So let's look historically and then just look at the reality of it. Clearly in the countries, China included, that have implemented since very strict kinds of programs of mitigation. Clearly it works. In our own country, we've seen indication of that in Washington. Remember, Washington State was the first to get hit, but they put in a really good program of mitigation. And if you look at the charts that Dr. Berg showed the other day, they're still down there doing well. And the reason is, again, what I've said before, but I think it's worth reiterating, that we have two opposing forces here. The virus, which wants to do what the virus wants to do. Viruses transmit from people to people. When people are separated from each other, virus does not transmit. It doesn't go anywhere. And that's the reason why something as simple as the physical separation, because if you look at the Vice President's chart that he shows all the time here from this podium, every aspect of that ending the COVID outbreak in 30 days has some aspect of it of physical separation, whether that's avoiding crowds, whether that's staying 6 feet away from people, whether that's doing teleworking. All of it does that. That's our most important tool. We'll be talking about vaccines and drugs and things like that that will mitigate later. But this is what we really have to do. And I want to actually just plead, as I do multiple times from here, to the American public. You know, as sobering and as difficult as this is, what we are doing is making a difference. So we really need to continue to do that. I must tell you, I was just mentioning to the Vice President as we came in, last night when I wasn't here, I went out with my wife and actually did a little power walking down Massachusetts Avenue. For those who live in Washington know what I'm talking about. And we passed a couple of restaurants where people were getting takeout food. The restaurants were closed to people going in, but they were open to takeout. And I saw something that absolutely made me feel really, really good. They were separating themselves by at least 6 feet. In fact, some of the restaurants had little things on the floor that said, stand here and then stand there. And I think if we as a nation pull together to do that, hopefully when we keep coming back here at these press conferences, we'll be able to show you that that curve that we keep talking about is going in the right direction. I'll be happy to answer questions later. Thank you.
Okay, please.
You said earlier that the virus is springing up in areas you did not expect. Yesterday you said some states in the country are not in jeopardy. The fact that this is unpredictable, isn't that an argument for every state to have one of these
I
stay-at-home
don't think so.
orders?
Look, there are some states that you have great distance, natural distance, big land, few people, and they're in very good shape. And if there is a case, they can quarantine that person, or that person will be separated, will be brought to a hospital, secure area. So you do have different cases as opposed to a New York or Los Angeles. Los Angeles is doing incredibly well, by the way. But areas where you have lots of people tight together, it's a big difference. So no, they're different. There are many different cases. Please.
You mentioned the military off the top, so 1,000 troops going to New York, and then are we expecting other mass deployments around the country? And then is it just Army? Is it?
No, not mass. Many of the places are really in great shape. They really have done a fantastic job, and we may add to the 1,000, but New York will be getting about 1,000 military people, nurses, doctors, lots of other people, because that's what they need. Yeah, and that's medical. Medical. Please.
Sir, you tweeted earlier today that you liked the idea of a second coronavirus task force that was focused on reopening the economy.
Thinking about it.
So I was wondering if you were planning to go forward with that.
Thinking about getting a group of people, and we have to open our country. You know, I had an expression, the cure can't be worse than the problem itself, right? I started by saying that. And I continue to say it. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. We've got to get our country open.
Reopening, can you talk about your call with the sports commissioners? Did you say you'd like to see fans back in arenas in
Absolutely. I want fans back in the arenas. I think it's by whenever we're ready. I mean, as soon as we can, obviously. And the fans want to be back too. You know, they want to see basketball and baseball and football and hockey. They want to see their sports. They want to go out onto the golf courses and breathe nice, clean, beautiful, fresh air. No, I can't tell you a date, but I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. But and you know, we're not going to have separation for the rest of our times on the planet. We need it for this period of time, but eventually people are going to be able to occupy those seats in arenas next to each other, like we have for all of my life and all of your life. They want to sit next to each other at restaurants. They don't want to be 6 feet away. And some restaurant man called up. He said, I'm worried because I have a small restaurant with not too many seats. I think he said 120. And he said, if I practice what this is, I'm down to 30 seats. I can't make it. I said, don't worry about it. That's for a short period of time. You'll be back to your number of seats. We can't do that. Otherwise, you're making everything. That means your stadium is half the size of what it was a month ago. No. They're going to be close together, but they're going to be breathing air that's not infected, that's not going to kill people. Please.
Since you're not committing to pack the stadiums by August. What are your contingencies?
I'm not committing to it. I'm not committing to it. We're going to see where we are. That'd be great if we could. But we're going to be back to good health soon, in my opinion. We're making a lot of progress. And we're making progress because, as Tony told the story about the restaurant and about how they were separated sort of automatically, people are doing that. People are doing that. They're staying in their homes. They don't want to go out. They're doing what they know is the right thing to do. It's not very complicated. It's in many ways it's a very beautiful thing to see. Yeah.
What's the plans for the international?
We have no contingency plan. We're having the convention at the end of August, and we think by the end of August we'll be in good shape. We have no contingency. It's going to be in North Carolina, as you know, Charlotte, and I think we're going to have a great convention. I notice. I think we had an opponent, but I almost didn't know who it was. He got 0.00001% of the vote, but I heard he dropped out 3 or 4 weeks ago. I'm not sure. Maybe you could tell me. That's the kind of opponent I had. And hopefully we have another one just like that in Joe.
This weekend, lawmakers are working on the next round of relief packages. What was not in the stimulus package that you signed last week that you would like to see in phase 4?
Well, I think we're going to need more money for the small businesses. It's been working out so well. It's been so efficient. The banks have been doing an incredible job. I think we're going to need more money there. I think. Yeah, we'll see. But based on the first couple of days, it's been incredible. I think that restaurants and entertainment, that would include sports leagues, all forms of entertainment, go back to the original, to where they get tax deductibility for what they're doing, and for people come in and buy tickets or go out for meals, and corporations can then send people into these restaurants who are going to have a hard time otherwise opening, in my opinion, and that could be the same for the sports leagues. So we want to see for entertainment and for restaurants deductibility so that corporations can take a deduction. They'll send their executives, they'll send people there, and they get a deduction. That is something that will really bring life back to the restaurants. I think make them hotter than before. You know, they used to have it, and when they ended it, it was really never the same. It was never the same. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, you just said that you want to see as few lives lost as possible in this pandemic. But there are still 8 governors, all Republicans, who have refused to issue these statewide stay-at-home orders. Your own experts, including Dr. Fauci, have said stay-at-home orders are the most effective way to stop the spread of this virus. So why not do everything possible and urge those governors right now to do that?
We have a thing called the Constitution, which I cherish, number 1. Number 2, those governors, I know every one of them, they're doing a great job. They're being very, very successful in what they're doing. And as you know, I want the governors to be running things. Now, in some cases, we'll supersede, but in this case, it's not. I think it depends. It depends on the individual state that you're talking about. But they're doing very well, and they're doing a magnificent job in running their states.
Well, South Carolina has 1,700 cases right now of coronavirus. Utah has 1,255. I mean, are these not states that you think should have
No,
those
I think they're doing a great job. Well, that's a very small number relative to population.
It's larger than some states that do have stay-at-home orders already in place.
It's up to the. If I saw something wrong, if I saw a massive breakout, of which that's not, I would come down very hard. But
Isn't the key in this pandemic getting ahead of those numbers, though?
no, not in that case, but in the case, I know the states you're talking about. By the way, I think you're up to 92% is covered. 92% of the country is covered. And from a constitutional standpoint, they made the difference. They called the shots. Yes, Jeff, go ahead.
Just a question about messaging. You and the others here are saying people need to continue following the mitigation efforts, but you're also saying again, the cure must not be worse than the problem. Which is it?
No, I'm just saying we have to get this country open, Jeff. It has to get open. This country was not designed to be closed. So we have the greatest we've ever had, and then we're paying people to stay home? Think of it. We're paying people not to go to work. How about that? How does that play? And they want to go to work, by the way. They don't want money. This country is great. But we're paying people. We have to get back to work. That's what I'm saying. Go ahead, please.
Off topic. It's about the announcement from last night. It's a yes or no question. Not that we expect the answer to be yes or no. But wasn't Michael Atkinson doing the job of the Inspector General of the intelligence community, the job he was supposed to do, when he simply took the whistleblower complaint to Congress what hadn't been taken previously. Wasn't he doing the job that he was supposed to do, that American taxpayers were paying him to do? And why did you decide to
I
terminate him?
thought he did a terrible job. Absolutely terrible. He took a whistleblower report, which turned out to be a fake report. It was fake. It was totally wrong. It was about my conversation with the president of Ukraine. He took a fake report and he brought it to Congress with an emergency, okay? Not a big Trump fan, that I can tell you. Instead of saying, and we offered this to him, no, we will take the conversation. Well, fortunately, we had a transcript. We didn't have a transcript with the kind of deception and dishonesty that were practiced by the Democrats. I might not be standing here right now, okay? Fortunately, we had a transcript, and it was a perfect transcript because even the lieutenant colonel admitted it was correct. Okay, wait a minute, you asked the question. So he took this whistleblower, and I keep saying, where's the whistleblower, right? And why was the whistleblower allowed to do this? Why was he allowed to be, you call it fraudulent or incorrect transcript? So we offered this IG, I don't know him, I don't think I ever met him. He never even came in to see me. How can you do that without seeing the person? He never came in to see me, never requested to see me. He took this terrible, inaccurate whistleblower report, right? And he brought it to Congress. We offered to have him see my exact conversation. It was all about the conversation, by the way. That was the whole thing. It was about the conversation, right? And then after he saw it, he must have said, wow, because as I've said it many times, and it drives you people crazy, it was a perfect conversation. So instead of going and saying, gee, this is a terrible thing he said about the president's conversation, well, it was a fraud. I didn't say that. And by the way, you have the whistleblower, where's the informer, right? And here's another question. Remember before I gave the transcript, in other words, before I revealed the real conversation, where's the second whistleblower? Remember the second whistleblower? Wait. There was going to be a second whistleblower. But after I gave the conversation, he just went away. He miraculously went away. Where's the informer? Because there was going to be this informer. Maybe Schiff was the informer. You ever think of that? He's a corrupt guy. He's a corrupt politician. So listen, I say this. Where's the informer? Remember, the informer was coming forward. But I gave. Because, see, I did one thing that surprised everybody. This gentleman right here said, boy, that was a shocker. I revealed the conversation. I got approval from Ukraine because I didn't want to do it without their approval. And they said, absolutely, you did nothing wrong. By the way, President of Ukraine, Foreign Minister said, he did nothing wrong. And over that, with 196 to nothing vote by the Republicans, not one dissenting Republican vote, dishonest Democrats impeached a President of the United States. That man is a disgrace to IGs. All right, let's go next, please. He's a total disgrace.
Did you run by your decision to dismiss the Inspector General by Senator?
Okay, we'll get off this because people want to talk about what we're talking about, but let me just tell you something. That's my decision. I have the absolute right. Even the fake news last night said he has the absolute right to do it. But ask him, why didn't you go and see the actual conversation? There was no rush. He said, oh, we have to rush it. He even said it was politically biased. He actually said that. The report could have been, you know who the whistleblower is, and so do you, and so does everybody in this room, and so do I. Everybody knows, but they give this whistleblower a status that he doesn't deserve. He's a fake whistleblower. And frankly, somebody ought to sue his ass off. All right, it's enough of the whistleblower. Go ahead, please.
The governor of New York today said that he is still desperate for ventilators and that he has accepted 1,000 of them from the Chinese government. Are you concerned that...
What he didn't say is, okay, let me tell you what he didn't say. Two very good friends of mine brought him those ventilators, right? Two very good friends of mine. They brought them. If you'd like their name, I'll give you their name. No, but the governor didn't mention that. It came through the Chinese, the country of China. But they were given by two friends of mine. But he didn't tell you that. Now, the governor also, you'll see when you read the letter, the governor also asked for 40,000. 40,000. He wanted 40,000 ventilators. Now, the governor, as you know, had a chance to get 16,000 a few years ago. He decided not to get that. The state of New York has asked for help. I've given him 4 hospitals, 4 medical centers. Then I gave him an additional hospital. Then I gave him military people to operate the hospital. They were not supposed to be COVID hospitals. The ship is not. Interesting thing happened with the ship. People aren't in accidents because there's nobody driving. There's nobody taking motorcycle rides down the West Side Highway at 100 miles an hour. People are away, so people aren't being injured. Now they're asking whether or not we could open up the ship for COVID. We have given the governor of New York more than anybody has ever been given in a long time. I'll just say, I was going to say in history, but in a long time. And I think he's happy. But I think that, because I watched what he said today, and it was fine. I wouldn't say gracious. It wasn't gracious. It was okay. I must tell you, Gavin Newsom has been gracious. Los Angeles, California, the job we've done, and all of California.
Why does that matter if they're gracious or not gracious?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, but I think when we've given as much as we've given to New York, somebody should say nice. I'll tell you who's been very nice. Mayor de Blasio has been very nice. He understands what we've given him. We brought him some more ventilators, too, yesterday. But nobody has been given like New York. And I know he appreciates it. He just can't quite get the words out, but that's okay.
When he says that he needs 40,000...
Please, go ahead.
Come back to Dr. Fauci's comments on...
To which one?
Dr. Fauci's comments on mitigation. On the reproductive value of the virus, the WHO had it at, I think, 2 to 2.6. Others had it a percentage point or 2 higher. Do we have a new number now based on those mitigation techniques? Have we managed to bring it down?
Well, Deb, I think maybe you should answer that, right? Dr. Burks, please. Yeah, sure.
You know, it's an excellent question, and it's why all of the modelers, and I really want to thank them again, they're reevaluating all of their models in light of the level of the impact of the mitigation. Remember, none of us had really been through this before. So when we modeled school closures and distancing and staying at home and all of these pieces, that had never really come into the model before. They're working on that very diligently now. Of course, just to be clear, we won't know how valid the models are until we move all the way through the epidemic. What we're triangulating right now, and instead of working on R0, we're looking at testing and triangulating testing, test positive cases, hospitalizations, ICUs, and of course, the recoveries, because that's also very important to us. I think it's very important that the American people know that there are equal number of states with less than 5% positives despite high levels of testing. So there are states that are mitigating and making this work. There are also the states that you know of, the 18 states that have the larger outbreaks, and we're watching them very carefully, triangulating for them all of the information to ensure that clients who come to the hospital are cared for. And then there's states in the middle that we're trying to figure out, are they changing or not? Each of those states and each of those epidemics within those states may have a different R value. And that is what we're trying to figure out, and it's very variable on each of these factors, but the bottom line is, and I think going into this weekend is really important for the American people to know this, Spain and Italy are moving through this. They are seeing their number of cases drop. They're seeing the number of people in hospitals drop. We are about, on our models and on the actual data, about 12 days behind them. At the same time, we see in the United States really good case studies of the impact at Washington State, of California, and then a series of smaller states where we're trying to learn from them how to do surveillance, and with these new HHS Abbott ID Now kits, and I just want to thank Admiral Gerard for getting them out, being able to look at testing in a more comprehensive way so we can be doing surveillance and mitigation simultaneously so we can answer that very question. It's going to be very difficult to answer at this moment across the United States because each metro cluster is on a different pathway as they move through move through the epidemic, and I think we just really ought to emphasize through, because we see Italy, we see Spain moving through, and we hope to be in that same position. At the same time, as the President said, he's concerned about every single person that is succumbing to this virus. We all are. And that's why we're making sure that in this triangulation, they're tracking minute by minute. When we say FEMA and HHS is tracking minute by minute the ventilator, hospital, and ICU bed need, that's exactly what's happening. And also being flexible and responsive. To have DOD take 1,000 healthcare providers out of their medical corps is a very big deal. I was in the medical corps for 29 years. We never did that. So this is saying we respect and understand the importance and value of the American lives and doing that. But the R values will be variable by state.
Before I do that, you had breaking news last night, where I think the probable presidential candidate for the Democrats will be Joe Biden. And he agreed that I was correct when I stopped people from China very early, very early, from coming into our country. And Dr. Fauci said that was a very big moment, because it would be a much different picture we have right now. Had we allowed thousands and thousands of people from a specific area, I don't have to go into it, from China, to come in highly infected, it would have been a very different thing. The other thing, so I appreciate the fact that he did, because I was called xenophobic, racist, I was called many things when I did that very early. And I got a lot of credit for it in the Federalist, because the Federalist covered the whole journey. And they said Trump was, I didn't speak to the author, respected author, they said Trump was right at every single move, and on top of that, he was going through a fake impeachment, a hoax. I was going through a hoax when I made the decision. And it does take a little time, and certainly a little thinking time. But I appreciated the fact that Joe Biden announced last night that he now agrees that I was correct. You saw the report come out that I was correct when I stopped people from China coming in at a very early stage.
Can you talk about the Captain Crozier of the USS?
Which one? What?
Captain Crozier that was removed. Captain was removed as the commander of the USS Roosevelt. I don't know if you saw the videos of sailors cheering for him as he left. All reporting shows that some sailors have said that they are worried to re-enlist because they are not convinced that commanders are taking care of their health and taking care of them. What do you say to them?
Well, I don't know much about it. I can only tell you this. Here we have one of the greatest ships in the world, nuclear aircraft carrier. Incredible ship with thousands and thousands of people, and you had about 120 that were infected. Now, I guess the captain stopped in Vietnam, and people got off in Vietnam. And perhaps you don't do that in the middle of a pandemic or something that looked like it was going to be. You know, history would say you don't necessarily stop and let your sailors get off. Number one, but more importantly, he wrote a letter. The letter was a 5-page letter from a captain, and the letter was all over the place. That's not appropriate. I don't think that's appropriate. And these are tough people. These are tough, strong people. I thought it looked terrible, to be honest with you. Now, they made their decision. I didn't make the decision. Secretary of Defense was involved, and a lot of people were involved. I thought it was terrible what he did. To write a letter? I mean, this isn't a class on literature. This is a captain of a massive ship that's nuclear powered. And he shouldn't be talking that way in a letter. He could call and ask and suggest. But he stopped in Vietnam. A lot of people got off the boat. They came back and they had infection. And I thought it was inappropriate for the captain of a ship. You know, I don't want to comment as to whether or not, but I agree with their decision 100%. In the back,
Joe Biden actually just attacked you. I don't know if you have seen it.
He just what?
Attacked you. He just
Well,
said
he didn't write anything. Look, he has people, he has professionals from the Democrats writing.
just did what he said. He said Donald Trump is not responsible for the coronavirus, but he is responsible for failing to prepare our nation to respond to it. How do you respond to that, sir?
He didn't write that. That was done by a Democrat operative. He doesn't write. He doesn't. He's probably not even watching right now. And if he is, he doesn't understand what he's watching. But just so you understand, It was very nice what they wrote out. I don't know, they released it at a strange time. Sort of a strange time to release something like that. But he admitted I was right. And if you read the Federalist story, which most of you won't, because you don't want to, but you'd learn something, because if you go through a chart, times. I was early. Dr. Fauci, I don't think he's changed his mind, but he said it was a very important step when we stopped China from coming in from the specific area that was heavily infected. We'd have a whole different thing right now. So I don't really know what Joe Biden said. I don't really care. And again, I see every once in a while I'll say something, I'll make a speech, and then it'll be critiqued, and I'll get this beautiful, brilliant critique. Joe Biden didn't write that. Joe Biden didn't write that. He wished he did, but he didn't. Go ahead, please.
The question, China has warned of a resurgence of the virus. Has the U.S. developed a plan if in fact a second wave of the virus does in fact occur here in the country?
Yes, we do. I mean, one of the things that obviously is parallel with thinking about the possibility, as I mentioned a little while ago, about mitigation allowing us to turn the corner, very much on the front burner is what happens when we do, because the risk of there being a resurgence is real. So what we need to do, and I believe I said this before, but it's worth repeating, that what we need to have in place, and we will have that in place, is that as you then pull back, you have to have the capability of, in a very pristine, precise way, do the kind of containment when you do see it. Because remember, when you get to mitigation, containment takes the back seat because you're just struggling to mitigate. But when you get it down, you need to make sure it doesn't resurge. That will require the ability to test, to identify, to isolate, and to do contact tracing. That's what we have to have in place, and hopefully we will at the time that we then pull back.
You mentioned the plasma strips, so these are plasma people that were infected and now either recovered or doing well enough, and then they're transferring it to family members. You walk through that's working, is it kind of like a case-by-case basis for hospitals? What are the results for that? I just was not clear.
So this is a situation where someone who's recovered from the virus doesn't have the virus in their system at all. You can take plasma, and this is a pretty routine procedure. You can actually donate a couple times a week, a couple times a month, frankly, and give that plasma. That plasma contains the proteins in the blood that have the antibodies against the virus. You can take that, process it, and then give it to someone who's ill. And so that allows you to transfer it. I mean, it doesn't have to be matched by family or anything like that. Since last Tuesday, the Tuesday before last, we've allowed academic centers and other laboratories and hospitals around the country to do this on a compassionate use basis. What we did was we pulled this together in what's called an expanded access program and run it through the Red Cross because they've got the greatest system and capacity for doing this. And this allows us to scale up so that when people get sick, we can actually have these donated plasma packs given to the patients who are sick.
Donating plasma packs, obviously some of us don't know, had it recovered. What should people be doing?
So we've started with the Red Cross in this program. We made an announcement yesterday. We are planning to actually scale that up, and we'll have more information this week because we want to make sure we have the systems in place. It's a superb question.
Clarify the situation with 3M right now. Germany said that there was an act of piracy, that 200,000 masks were apparently diverted from Thailand to the United States instead of Berlin. Is that did that actually happen? And should 3M be fulfilling contracts?
We're very disappointed in 3M. They should be taking care of our country. They can sell to others, but they should be taking care of our country. The people that have dealt with them have dealt successfully with many companies over the last month. They don't like the way 3M has treated our country. They don't frankly like the representatives of 3M. And no active you said piracy, right? Piracy? There's been no act of piracy. There's been no act of piracy. It's the opposite. 3M has not treated our country well, and if they do, great, and if they don't, they're going to have a hell of a price to pay. Okay? I say it that way. And I watched him on television on something talking about so hard to believe, so hard to fathom. They ought to get their act together. Because I got involved and I looked at what happened, and they have not, 3M has not treated our country well. Go ahead, please. We'll get you the information.
I was wondering about what you're seeing as far as patients in regards to coronavirus. I know the president mentioned this earlier, but what does the medicine say?
What is the question? Is that what is the incidence of coronavirus?
Rare chance of getting coronavirus?
Yes. Right now, this is being looked at in a natural history study. We don't have any definitive information to be able to make any comment on that. It's an obvious good question because it might be a way for us to get some interesting and potentially important data as to the role of those medications. But that's something that is now being looked at, but we don't have any data to be able to say anything definitively.
And I hope they use the hydroxychloroquine, and they can also do it with Z-Pack, subject to your doctor's approval, and all of that. But I hope they use it because I'll tell you what do you have to lose? In some cases, they're in bad shape. What do you have to lose? It's been out there for a long time, and I hope they use it. And they're going to look at with doctors, work with doctors, get what you have to get. But we have it stockpiled, and we have a lot of it, and we're getting more of it. And as I told you, I spoke to Prime Minister Modi. We're getting more of it, but we have a lot of it. And I hope they use it because it's been used for a long time, and therefore it's passed the safety test. FDA has been terrific. Dr. Hahn, I appreciate it very much too. But I've seen some results. Now it's early, I guess. It's early, but and they should look at the lupus thing. I don't know what it says, but there's a rumor out there that because it takes care of lupus very effectively, as I understand it, it's a drug that's used for lupus. So there's a study out there that says people that have lupus haven't been catching this virus. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Why don't you investigate that? And there's also other studies, with the malaria, that the malaria countries have very little people that take this drug for malaria, which is very effective for malaria, and those countries have very little of this virus. I don't know. You're going to check it out. But I think people should, if it were me, in fact, I might do it anyway. I may take it. Okay? I may take it. And I'll have to ask my doctors about that. But I may take it. Yeah, please go ahead.
Last week, we had been really optimistic about Russia and Saudi Arabia working together on oil. But in the last 24 hours, the OPEC Plus has been pushed back.
OPEC can do whatever. Look, I've been against OPEC all my life. Because what is it? It's an illegal, you could call it a cartel, you could call it a monopoly, a lot of different names for it. But it broke down very violently. Very violently. So I don't care about OPEC. I really don't. I couldn't care less about OPEC. Let me just say, no. I think they're going to settle it. You know why? Because they're going to be destroyed. They're destroying themselves if they don't. Russia is very important, and we had a very good conversation, President Putin and myself, very good. But Russia is a big part of their economic well-being is from oil. Well, oil is at a record low. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It's actually lower than you even think. And it's to their advantage. Obviously, it's to Saudi Arabia's advantage. They told me they're discussing, Saudi Arabia went much further than that. He thinks that a deal is going to be made at 10 million barrels reduction, and maybe more than that. He actually indicated it would most likely be much more than that. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we're going to see what happens. But as far as OPEC is concerned, I mean, I was against OPEC for years and years because I thought it was very unfair to our country. The beautiful thing is we have built one of the great, one of the things we've done is created so much we produce. We're the #1 producer in the world right now. I don't like it for a different reason because it's going to hurt a lot of jobs in our country. This price is going to hurt a lot of jobs. Now, with all of that being said, people are going to be driving, paying 90 cents a gallon. You ever hear of that? What's that, 1952 or something? All right? So, from that standpoint, but you know what? I am a big believer in our great energy business, and we're going to take care of our energy business. And if I have to do tariffs on oil coming from outside, or if I have to do something to protect our thousands and tens of thousands of energy workers and our great companies that produce all these jobs, I'll do whatever I have to do. Okay, yeah, ma'am, go ahead.
You tweeted a little while ago about how sad it is for kids they don't have Little League right now. And I'm wondering if you're willing to share about your youngest son and how he's dealing with life and sheltering in place, not going to school, no sports.
Well, he's a good athlete, and he loves soccer, and he's like everyone else. I mean, everything's shut down. He's in his room. He's happy, but he's not as happy as he could be. He'd like to be playing sports. Barron. And let's see what happens. But we have to get back. We have to get back. Remember that. We have to get back. And we have to get back soon. Okay?
On the jobs reports number.
You guys ever stop? You want to keep going for a little while? I mean, do you ever stop? How many times you ask? And in many cases, it's the same. Actually, a lot of good questions. Go ahead. But keep going, yes? So you're not going to blame me that I kept it going too long? People said, oh, you kept... Every time you'll ask it, no. I mean, no, it's amazing. Every hand went up. I thought we've gone through the... I think every single hand went up the last time. You know what it shows you? It shows you that you love what you do. Go ahead. You do. No, you do. And some of you do it well. Not all of you. Go ahead. I'm not looking at you, by the way.
Looking at the jobs reports numbers yesterday, obviously that's kind of a small portion because it's only the first half of March. Was there anything in there that was any sign of optimism? Obviously, we all saw the numbers down in retail, down in hospitality. Was there anything you said, okay, maybe with this virus we will see some sort of net gain?
Look, the job numbers are what they are. We asked everybody to go home, don't work. So the numbers are going to be, you know, astronomical. We understand that. I understood that. I know somebody said that numbers are meaningless, and then they took that to mean, oh, jobs don't mean anything. That, you know, it was just another fake news story. It wasn't me that said it, by the way. It was a very smart person, but they meant it by saying it really is what. That's why I answer your question very carefully. The numbers are what they are. We know the numbers were going to be massive, because we told everybody to go home and lock your door, essentially, right? Don't come to work. You can't come to work. Don't go outside. Don't breathe. Don't do anything. We got to open up our country. But I know that it's coming back. And in my opinion, it will come back very strong. There's a tremendous energy. There's a tremendous demand. And some good things have happened. I mean, I don't know. You know, there's one habit that, as you know, most of you, a lot of you have covered me a long time before I did this. I was never a big believer in shaking hands. But I decided if you don't shake hands, you're not going to be winning a lot of contests. Right now, I'm not sure you have to shake hands anymore. A couple of people have told me, Deborah, you told me, that if we didn't shake hands, the incidence of flu is a big deal also. And that flu might be cut down in half. Who knew that shaking hands was such a bad thing? I felt it. I mean, I always felt it. And, you know, I was never to a point where I can't shake somebody's hand. I knew people like that too, but there weren't too many of them. But when I ran for office, all of a sudden I'm shaking hundreds of hands. And if I don't, I wouldn't even be standing here. But I think that's a custom that maybe people don't have to. We have to get close together. We have to sit together in the stadiums. We have to sit next to each other and rest. All that stuff is going to happen. But I think the concept of shaking hands maybe is something that's going to be a little bit from the past. Let's see what happens. Maybe they'll go right back to shaking hands.
Is there anything you want people to do to show their support, especially we have two doctors up there, to show their support for the medical community? Is there something that we see people clapping when nurses leave?
Well, we've seen a lot of that. You might say something that I've seen such support. I saw this morning where everyone's they're clapping for fire department, they're clapping for police, but they are really these people are, you know what they're like? They're like, Tony, they're like warriors, Mike. They're like warriors. They were going into Elmhurst Hospital, which has been tragic, right near where I grew up, in Queens. Going in, and the people in buildings are going, I mean, they're the rock stars. They're warriors. Nurses, doctors, first responders, what they're going through. And they don't even know what's going to happen. I mean, they go in, and by the way, even if they have great equipment, they're catching it. You know, great equipment. They have good equipment, they catch it. They catch it with good, with bad. It is evil. But Tony, you might say something, and Mike, you may say something about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that question, because I don't think people can really fully appreciate the extraordinary effort of these people. I mean, it's amazing. I did all of my medical training in New York City in a big, busy New York City hospital at a time when it was just what you normally see in a hospital. I came to NIH and I spent about 5 to 8 years in the very early years of the AIDS epidemic, which was just the darkest years of my life because almost every single one of my patients died. And yet, as we knew epidemiologically, that there was very little risk. There was a small risk, but very little risk of getting infected from the patient. To see now what these brave warriors are doing in the hospitals, not only giving life-saving treatment to people, but every single day putting themselves at risk for themselves and their family. I just think that the American public owe a phenomenal debt of gratitude for these people. And they should just salute them in every way you can. You know, when we were at war, and at the height of the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, when you're at an airport and you see somebody with a uniform come by, everybody, I think that's what we should do when we see healthcare.
She'll be meeting the banks to see what extra protection could be given to customers. Later in the programme, we'll update you on what's happened since. But first, it's two
stories are incredibly moving about what healthcare workers are doing every day. It's not just that they're going back into the hospital in places like New York and New Jersey, earlier than that in Washington State and California where this first began. It's not just that they're providing care to people, but because of the nature of how contagious the coronavirus is, they're also supplementing for family. I mean, that's what gets to me. When I hear the stories that, understandably, in nursing homes and in hospitals, they're restricting visitors, then they should, to prevent the spread of the virus to be brought into the hospital or to be brought out. And so to hear the stories of healthcare workers who are holding up an iPhone while someone who's critically ill with the coronavirus may well be saying their last goodbyes to their family, and then to be there in those moments. I mean, our healthcare workers they're not just doctors and nurses today, they're supplementing for family, for people all across the country. And I just think tomorrow's Palm Sunday. It's Holy Week in the great Christian tradition. And I have people ask me from time to time, send me an email or on the many conference calls that we have, they said, what can we be praying about? And my first thought is with the families who have lost loved ones and the patients who are struggling with coronavirus. But during this very special week, I just encourage people to pray for our healthcare workers. Pray for them and their families. They are really the hands and feet every day, not just of healthcare, but of the heart of the American people. And we are all grateful for them every hour of the day.
And think also about the Army Corps of Engineers. It's a little different, depending on where they are and where they're working. But the Army Corps of Engineers throwing up a hospital in New York City, 2,500 beds in 3 days. I mean, think of that. And FEMA, what they're doing. And the National Guard is now delivering for the states because the states were unable to we drop it at a big warehouse where we're told to drop it. And the states were unable, some of the states were unable to bring it from the warehouse to the site. So we got the National Guard to become a delivery service, if you can believe it, and they would bring it. And some of those sites were dangerous sites. They were very dangerous sites. Think of that. It's been amazing. It's been amazing. I just think I've never seen anything like it. I'm so proud of this country. And really, it's a world problem. And some countries in the world are just handling it so well. You know, again, I keep saying it's 151. That was as of 2-3 days ago. It's probably more. Some people said they didn't know there were that many countries. That's how big this is. And Mike said something else. So, yeah, Palm Sunday. Tomorrow. Think of it. We're not going to churches on Palm Sunday. Think of next Sunday, Easter. And I brought it up before. I said, maybe we could allow special for churches. Maybe we could talk about it. Maybe we could allow them with great separation outside on Easter Sunday. I don't know, it's something we should talk about. But somebody did say that, well, then you're sort of opening it up to that little, do we want to take a chance on doing that when we've been doing so well? But Easter Sunday, Palm Sunday. I'm going to be watching tomorrow, live from Riverside, California. Great church. But I'm going to be watching on a computer, right? On a laptop. I think on Easter maybe I'll be watching from a laptop as opposed. So how sad is it that we have Easter Palm and Easter Sunday, and people are watching on laptops and computers? It's sad. But the job that this whole country has done is amazing. But I'll say this, our medical professionals, what they've done, because they walk into those hospitals, you see them putting on their gear, and they're putting it on as they're walking through the front doors. And some of those people are going to die. They're going to die. You know, it's like incredible. And we can say what we want, Tony and Deb, about young and medium age. Plenty of those people dying too. You know, it generally hits the older people where they have problems. It hits young people too, and it hits middle-aged people too. But these people are walking into the hospital, and I watch. I think it's incredible. And they're putting their outfit, they're getting it, and they're going in. It's like a war. Again, there's never been anything so contagious as this. In 1917, it was vicious if you got it, but it wasn't contagious like this. Now, in 1917, had they had the internet and all the means of communication, they could have practiced distancing. You know, by the time people started thinking in those terms, they lost, I guess, 75 to 100 million people. So that's modern, you know, that's a modern day great thing that happened. Please.
To what extent do you think you can use antibody tests to determine who can go back to work?
Well, I don't know. I'd rather leave that to the doctor. Doctor, do you have an answer to this?
We think it'll be a tool to help us get people back to work. It'll be additional information because, as you know, if you have an antibody, that means you were exposed and have recovered from it. That, with the information about diagnosis, should help.
Scale up this testing to determine on a large scale how many people can go back to work and have these things.
So as you know, a couple weeks ago we provided a great deal of regulatory flexibility around this. A lot of great developers have been working on this. Dr. Burke's put a call out to the academic labs around the country to do this, and we've been working very closely with a number of manufacturers, so we think that it can be scaled up relatively quickly.
Question for Dr. Fauci. In a recent interview, you had said that you knew the 15-day guidance would not be enough. I wanted to ask your confidence level about the 30-day guidance and whether it'll be enough.
You know, it's tough to talk about levels of confidence, but I can tell you one thing that I feel strongly, that if we do, in a very proactive way, what I said in my opening comments, and people literally across the country as a baseline have that physical separation, and as we mentioned up here, there'll be varying degrees of that depending upon whether you're in New York City or you're in a place that's less, but every place, everybody should be doing some degree of this physical separation. If we do that, I have confidence that what we will see is the turning around of the curve. Whether or not it'll be all the way down where we want, it's impossible to say. I would be foolish to say that. But the one thing I am confident in, so let's take this to the bank, that mitigation works. So it does. We've seen it in other countries. We've seen it in our own country. And that's the reason why I keep coming up at every chance I get to plead with the American people to please take a look at those guidelines that the Vice President keeps putting up with his chart, because every single one of those points has something to do with physical separation.
But again, we're not going to destroy our country. We have to get back. Because, you know, at a certain point, you'll lose more people this way to all of the problems caused than you will with what we're doing right now. What we're doing right now, I think, is going to be very successful. But you know what? I don't know. We have a big decision to make at a certain point. Okay? We have a big decision to make. We went this extra period of time. But I said it from the beginning, the cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. And we cannot let that happen. We have an incredible country. We were having the greatest period in our country's history from an economic standpoint in many other ways. We cannot let this continue. So at a certain point, some hard decisions are going to have to be made. Go ahead.
Mr. President, ventilator manufacturers are doubling, tripling, even quadrupling their production in some cases.
That's true.
And yet medical experts and some of these manufacturers are predicting that there will still be shortages of tens of thousands of ventilators. Is it time for you to level with the American public that there likely will be shortages of ventilators in some cases?
Could be. I mean, it could be you have shortages, and it could also be that you have some that have way overestimated the number of ventilators they need. We think that we have a good amount ready to move. I mean, literally, like an army. They're ready to move to any hotspot. But some of the ones that you're talking about, always a nasty question from CNN, but some of the ones, because I think that, frankly, because you know what, you've asked that question about 10 times over the course of about a month. Look, we're mobilized and ready to go. We have a lot of ventilators ready to go, and if we had given them all out, we would, and you would be overstocked in many areas. What we're doing is we have a very good plan to take from some areas, even though we have the 10, or almost the 10,000, we're also taking from areas that won't be as badly hit as today we think they will be. There will be some areas hit harder than we think, and there's nothing that Deborah, Tony, or any of these professionals can do about it. This thing moves in a lot of ways. But what we're going to do is we are going to have, and you look at us compared to a lot of other countries, we're in much better shape. But these professionals have done an amazing job. Now, over the next week, in 2 weeks, it's going to be a very, very deadly period, unfortunately. But we're going to make it so that we lose as few lives as possible, and I think we're going to be successful. I think we already are successful in that regard. When you look at that graph, and you see all of the bumps, if you want to call it, at a very low level, and you see a couple at a higher level, they were tough, but you see all of those levels. You know, when you look at, and when you hear about Italy, and then you hear about France, and then you hear about, what we have is we have many Italys all over. They're like countries. California is a country. New York is a country. If you look at them from the standpoint of what we're talking about, we have many like country spots. Some are hot spots, and there's nothing we're going to do about it. One of the biggest surprises is Louisiana, because it started off so good, and then all of a sudden it shot up like a rocket. But we're going to try and have ventilators wherever we possibly can. Jeff, go ahead.
Effort of some of these companies to ramp up production as fast as possible, it still won't be enough.
Well, New York wanted 40,000 ventilators. 40,000. Think of what 40,000 is. It's like cars. It's a big project. It's an expensive product. I mean, some of them are $50,000 a piece. I saw one the other day, 55,000. That was before they start playing the games with supply and demand. Okay. Some are very, very luxury. Some are not. But frankly, these are very expensive products. These are very high-tech projects and products, and they take a period of time. We have thousands of them being built right now. Some will be ready, and we're going to have extra, and we'll keep them at hospitals. But a lot of hospitals, a lot of states had the chance of getting ventilators, and they turned those ventilators down so they could spend their money on something else. And in a way, I understand that, because who thinks a thing like this? It's not a knock. If I'm told, like perhaps in New York, you can spend $1 billion on ventilators and get 16,000 or a massive number of ventilators that they've been offered over the years, or you can build a new bridge or road or something. I mean, I understand how that works. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying a lot of the states had chances of stockpiling a lot of ventilators. They didn't do it, and I think we're doing a very good job in helping them out. Please, Jeff. And it's a very fair question. I understand that question very well. Yeah.
On what you and the others have been saying today about it being a deadly week or two coming, can you give us a sense of perhaps Dr. Berg's of what that means numerically?
I'd like to ask also, I'd like to say, we know pretty much the line of attack. We know the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. They seem to be checking out, unfortunately, in some cases, they're on the low side, which we're very happy. We want to keep them on the very low side, and that's where we're headed. And I think that's maybe where we're headed. But I'd like to ask maybe you and Tony, where is the week or the number of days of greatest attack? What will be our worst day, if that's possible to determine? I think that's what you're asking.
Yes, exactly are you expecting?
So as you can look in the places that are the most difficult hit right now, the Detroit area, the New York area, Louisiana area, and we are doing it by the counties in those states because there are, mostly it's metro areas and the bedroom communities around those metro areas because people went to work and got exposed and came home and exposed other. If you look out in New York now, you see that it's in Long Island and it's out in Suffolk County and Nassau County. All of those counties, Wayne, Oakland, they're all on the upside of their curve of mortality. So when you get to the peak, you come down the other side. So by the predictions that are in that healthdata.org, they're predicting in those 3 hotspots, all of them hitting together in the next 6 to 7 days.
Tell me more about this visit to Bishopsgate.
You can go to the website. It's variable. Each one of those communities is different, but you know where New York is, how much their mortality has been, and what we're seeing today are the people who were infected 2 or 3 weeks ago. If mitigation in New York worked, and we believe it is working, the cases are going to start to go down, but the mortality will be a lag behind that because of the comorbidities and other conditions. So that's why all of the predictions are that this next week, and I think we said this last Sunday when we talked about the charts, and it's difficult and we try to prepare the American people to understand that. You have to, as much as you go up, you have to come down the other side because coming down is a reflection of the cases that were coming in before. I'd rather not say a number, but the numbers are available if you go to the website. I mean, you can see that there's several hundreds per day in New York. And I think Governor Cuomo has talked about that increasing still into the 500, 600, 700 range a day. So, that's very concerning to us. We, again, applaud the healthcare workers who are doing every single thing humanly possible to save more lives. And we are ensuring on a ventilator by ventilator, day by day, to get them there so that we can say and we can be there when they need it. Because we are supposed to be that group that comes in after all of the resources are exhausted. And we really applaud what Oregon did. And we really applaud what the governor is doing about moving between the states, between the different counties to bring them to New York. Because that's what's needed today. A different place will be needed tomorrow.
Off on something apparently you said yesterday that you had some concerns about Pennsylvania, Colorado, and Washington, D.C. Could you expand on that?
We're watching them because they are starting to go on that upside of the curve. We're hoping and believing that if people mitigate strongly, the work that they did over the last 2 weeks will blunt that curve and they won't have the same upward slope and peak that New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and part of Rhode Island are having. So this is a very important, the next 2 weeks are extraordinarily important, and that's why I think you've heard from Dr. Fauci, from myself, from the President and the Vice President, that this is the moment to do everything that you can on the presidential guidelines. This is the moment to not be going to the grocery store, not going to the pharmacy, but doing everything you can to keep your family and your friends safe. And that means everybody doing the 6 feet distancing, washing your hands.
So, ditto to everything that Dr. Burke said, but also to emphasize why it's so important to do that, because we're looking at 3 or 4 really key hotspots that are still going up. it's absolutely essential that the ones that are down at that lower level that Dr. Burke showed the other day, those communities where they're still going up, we've got to make sure we don't have multiple waves of peaks. That's going to be the answer to the question of when we can start pulling back. Because if you keep having multiple peaks and different waves, that's going to make it very difficult. We put your foot on the exactly what I said just before, and I keep repeating. Just make sure everybody does at least the minimal amount of that physical separation. Because the virus has no place to go if you're physically separated.
And one of the reasons that I keep talking about hydroxychloroquine is that the question that nobody ever asks, and the question that I most hate the answer to, is what happens if you do have a ventilator? What are your chances? And I just hope that hydroxychloroquine wins, coupled with perhaps the Z-Pack, as we call it, dependent totally on your doctors and the doctors there. Because you know the answer to that question. If you do have the ventilator, you know the answer to that question. And I hate giving the answer. So I don't want to get them there. I don't want to get them there. There's a possibility. And I say it, what do you have to lose? I'll say it again, what do you have to lose? Take it. I really think they should take it. But it's their choice. And it's their doctor's choice or the doctors in the hospital. But hydroxychloroquine, try it if you'd like. The other thing, if you have a heart condition, I understand. Probably you stay away from the Z-Pack. But that's an antibiotic. It can clean out the lungs. The lungs are a point of attack for this horrible virus. But when you have a ventilator, don't ask the answer because I hate it. If you have it and it's working beautifully, I don't like the answer because it's not a very high percentage. So I want to keep them out of ventilators. I want to keep them, if this drug works, it will be not a game changer because that's not a nice enough term. It will be wonderful. It'll be so beautiful. It'll be a gift from heaven if it works. Because when people go into those ventilators, you know the answers, I know the answers, and I'm glad you don't write about it. Mike,
Well, you've heard from the experts what our task force has heard.
I don't remember exactly.
It'll be a difficult week
We like to
for
encourage
the American people.
young talent.
You will see testing increase around the country, and so cases are going to continue to rise across America. And before I give a few facts relevant to an earlier question about ventilators, let me add my voice to what the President just said and what all the physicians who spoke have said. Even though we see the losses rising in the days ahead, do not be discouraged, because there's evidence across the country that Americans have been putting the social distancing and mitigation into practice, and it is making a difference. We are seeing it in the new cases that are being reported. Because remember, families that experience loss up to this day and in the next week have a loved one who contracted the coronavirus, in most cases more than 2 weeks ago. In many cases before social distancing and mitigation efforts were put into effect. And so we want to encourage you to believe in the President's coronavirus guidelines for America. Go to coronavirus.gov, print them off again, put them on the refrigerator, and remind yourself to put them into practice. On the subject of ventilators, if I can amplify the point the President made, our team at FEMA is doing a remarkable job working with governors, state health officials, and local hospitals, particularly focused on our priority areas. We'll prefer the New York metro area. which includes New Jersey and Connecticut. We're focused on the New Orleans metro area, Louisiana. We're focusing on Detroit. We're focusing on Chicago. These are the areas where we see the significant rise in cases. And we are surging supplies, specifically ventilators, but all personal protective equipment from FEMA to those areas. And just to give you a couple of examples, I spoke to governors in New York, New Jersey, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Maryland today alone. And in those cases, Governor Cuomo is actually assessing all of the available ventilators. We've sent 4,400 ventilators already to New York. As has already been referenced, we're going to receive a shipment of over 1,000 from overseas. And allow me to say, as I told her personally today, the governor of Oregon, Governor Kate Brown, her unilateral decision to send 140 ventilators, because Oregon, they felt Oregon today is in a place where they could give those ventilators to New York. It's the very highest American tradition of loving your neighbor.
Long time.
And when I talked to Governor Cuomo, Mr. President, he actually told me they never asked Oregon for the ventilators. And Governor Brown hadn't even called them to tell him that she was doing that. It really is remarkable. When I talked to Governor Hogan today, and when President and I will be speaking to all of America's governors on Monday again, I told him how inspired I was and how he ought to start to hear to other governors in areas where they can spare resources to be joining with us at the federal level and providing them to states at the point of the need. But just a few, for instances, as I told Governor Phil Murphy, we deployed 200 ventilators to New Jersey today. Louisiana, we're monitoring literally hour by hour what's taking place in New Orleans with some encouraging news, but still great challenges. Yesterday, you heard the President say that we deployed 330,000 gallons that have been delivered to the public health systems and hospitals there. 200. I spoke to Governor Charlie Baker today and was able to inform him. We're watching Boston area very closely. 100 ventilators are deploying today. I spoke to Governor Gretchen Whitmer today. Detroit is experiencing a significant number of cases. We're watching it carefully. And today, FEMA directed 300 ventilators to Michigan. Again, as the President said, we're all working our hearts out. What I want to say to American families, and what I want to say to healthcare workers is that we are going to identify the resources, leave no stone unturned, and we are going to focus resources on those areas in the order that they emerge. Now, the last thought is backup mitigation. We are hoping that we do not see other major cities in the country experience what Seattle experienced, what greater New York City area is experiencing, what New Orleans is experiencing, and that's all in the hands of the American people today. So I just want to encourage you, coronavirus.gov, put into practice the President's coronavirus guidelines, and you will do your part to save lives, protect the American people, and ensure that we will have the resources to meet this moment wherever the nation arrives.
Long program that got up and running yesterday. We're hearing from a lot of small business owners a lot of concern of where they will get this money. Some say some of the banks weren't ready yesterday to start processing loans. Some banks are layering.
We're way ahead of schedule. The banks have been great. Chase, Bank of America, they're so far ahead. This is typical with you in particular. Yeah, they're behind. They're not behind. It's been a flawless, so far beyond our expectations. You should say, I hear you're doing well, but maybe I don't even hear of any glitch. They've done billions of dollars of loans to small businesses. And these are great loans. These are loans that get immediately paid off. These are loans that get businesses back. I wish you could ask a question where something's working so well. Now, maybe things won't work well, and I don't mind that kind, but where something's working so well And you ask a question in such a negative way. It's doing great. Yeah, go ahead. It's doing great. Really good. Maybe it won't in 2 weeks, and I'll respond differently, but it's doing great. You know it, and so does everyone else. Everyone's shocked how well it's doing.
That's not a problem. Because
Dr. Burns,
I never understand it.
seeing that
I differently understand it.
virus, seeing in Europe,
Because the last time I talked to you, I always start telling you the same word.
between 30 and 50.
I'll call you.
Has the data
That's
that you've
it.
seen
You say, okay, I will call you.
that assessment
Like,
on that
I'll call you. I say,
I don't think it changed much.
Something happened. Sister says, so.
Same pattern, same answer that we're giving you for the last month.
between 30 and 50 being more
I will
hours
not be talking to you. No, wait. I remember it. Remember I said you say you go to your sister. That's Saturday.
We can bring an updated graph, but it's very
So your
similar.
sister says go to yeah, because you tell me you did tell me you go to sister.
We're looking at it very seriously right now. We're dealing with governors, we're dealing with airlines, we're dealing with a lot of different factors. It's a very difficult decision. We're also doing testing, getting into planes, very strong testing. States are doing testing of people that leave planes because they don't want to have people coming in who are infected. So understanding that and the level of testing has been enormous. Okay, and some states are saying you have to go in quarantine for 2 weeks if you come from certain areas. So knowing that, we're working with the governors.
Domestic travel or people coming from
Both. Some states are doing, when they land, they're doing very strong, very critical testing. Please, go ahead. Okay, well, then you'll check up again.
Last question on ventilators.
The governments are doing it,
One last question on ventilators. The governor of New York said that he received donation of ventilators from Jack Ma of Alibaba, which I think is your friend. Would you put on the business community to donate ventilators, not necessarily to New York, but other states like Louisiana?
No, Jack Ma is a friend of mine, and he's made it very possible to get about 1,000 ventilators from China. That was from him and my husband. It was really a gift, and we appreciate it very much. It was very nice of them. All right, I think we've had enough. We'll be seeing you very soon, and I'm sure that you know that all of us here, we work very hard. We're working very hard. We are really coming up into a time that's going to be very horrendous. Probably a time like we haven't seen in this country. I don't think we've seen anything like this in this country. We're getting to that point where it's going to really be some very bad numbers. We want to keep those numbers a lot lower than they would have been. And we will do that. We have tremendous talent working. We have tremendous people. And that is those governors, and it plays everybody. Everybody's working. But unfortunately, we're getting to the time when the numbers are going to peak. And it's not going to be a good-looking situation. I really believe we probably have never seen anything like these kinds of numbers during a world war, World War I or II or something. But this is a war. All to yourself, and it's a terrible thing. We will be seeing you soon. We'll keep you totally abreast. We're also going to be releasing more ventilator numbers because we have a lot of them coming and a lot of them going to different locations, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you. Thank you.
All them things they are. Yes, right. Maybe to say something, God will turn you around. Very kind and you talk these talks to my boy, you don't talk about it. You talk, consistent, So, you have to understand. You understand anything indeed. You can't just continue to live in the blind belief. Today to take after you talk fine. Then all of a sudden, after 1 or 2 days, everything will change. So Mr. Man says something like new space. He said it's new space. It's a new space. And the young, he said no the young. And when you know the young, you know live that kind of life they take home. Well anyway, how you did now? You don't tell me you can always. How long? I want to. we say we'll call you, but I think your sister will give me the number. I think say that call one or two times. Say call about 3 times. Say you never just you answer the call. I say not to me voiceable. Well, so how you became so I still a talk. It's in yourself. It's about the panel. John, yes.
Good to be back. Is it?
Then you know, a chorus now the song.
What is that to do?
Hey, talking about I'm not going to waiting say.
Then why did you agree to come?
So anyway, I became.
Well, I've had to dress myself for the last 3 days, so
how did you do?
Sympathy from me.
So whose class did you now?
Gracious me, Miss Spear. Don't often see you here. True, Mrs. Ross. I'm a creature more suited to London me.
How many more years the president?
On stand, Mr. Turner.
Yes, I enjoy the dance. 2 more years.
I'll do whatever you ask of me.
Yeah, so that this now done at 2023. So by 2023, 2025, I don't go to university.
Here we go. There won't be a smile out of them.
I don't become big man.
You will look after me.
Well, beginning to this.
John Benson.
Picking a group.
Not sure.
Yeah, they go. You don't see no man for it, you don't understand the problem. Give you the support. Because we don't big so now. At least not for rely on than anybody else. Yeah, I used to start. It's in yourself. Okay.
And is your marriage?
Yeah, be saying you call me. I go salon. Like January, yes, I go salon January. Yeah,
sometimes I try to remember.
I've been trying for that game middle. I've been trying to get middle the number. Because things inside be saying the go.
I suppose I would not be the first.
I don't know if it's go or no go. Oh yeah. Let me see, in December, let me say the go. Yeah, because myself, December, I say go and go. But in December, will not be right. So I'll be go January. Like, yes, I go January. I come by the end of the come by the end of January. So I'll be always saying go in the go. I'll be one time, forget the number. Anyway, I was saying, salon now in my backyard. Yeah. So what do you want me to do? You know well now?
On top of the wardrobe.
So go take it.
But you mustn't.
And voice sharp? And voice still sharp? Come on, if you talk on phone, you don't say that. You don't say that carry that age yourself.
I went for a walk before dinner.
Yeah,
I've done something with old Parker's
so how the corona did you?
We should tidy it up a bit before we find a new tenant.
You'll never guess my story.
Well, you know saying you know for promote.
I would try.
Mr. Bella says.
Hey, you know saying you know for promote.
Your Brockenhouse nephew. That's right.
Because you get underlying problem. They not tell you, GP not tell you.
He said he'd seen you and his aunt.
Well, it's for promote. Well, anyway, but you don't say you got underlying problem anyway. All said that you know. But if you want to promote, if you want to take the risk, you can take the risk. You know, if you want to promote, you can promote. As long as you make sure, say, to me, if you make sure, say, you want to go, put together gloves. That gloves, that blue gloves, that gloves when you use them for cook. Because it didn't have any restaurants. that blue gloves when they restaurants. Yes. I think they use for my kitchen. I think restaurants.
Don't worry, Father.
So, Mr. Sabi, they get a house. We are actually using what you want into another way. You know, yeah. Because if you order with fish, if you order with all kind food stuff. Yes. If you get that blue gloves within a one, then you get that to my nose. You get that to it. You didn't call yourself. Where do you take over your nose? Mask. You know that, huh?
I know you're awake.
We forget some more. You forget that mask, you get the gloves, it can help. Because the gloves they prevent for anytime we put your hand, you're not going to be infected. Because you know, say your hand can carry the segment of the sneeze, even the clothes if we wear. But the clothes you can pull them, so by the time you go and wear them back, you don't come out. But your hand, you know, say your hand, as soon as some people as they cancel, they don't wash their hands safe. They don't take it. And a bad thing on me. People don't wash your hand, you know. And especially when you can't say you not wash your hand, you got good to do. Some people say for washing face, they don't wash your face. Some people don't wash your mouth safe. So, waiting at the call. Well, I mean, so everything me? What's the problem? Well, I'm not saying what's the problem. We go world on that corner, innit? Apart from corner, it's not of the country. What do country this? It's now white people in country. Despite, let me just say because I make you citizen of this country, you be one of them. Say I'm bleaches, therefore you are one of them. But they provide you with all the facilities and security. And provide you with facilities and security. I mean, what you go do? Let's go to follow the rules. You know, this country we own by law. Don't the government we always do the do. Right? I make it fine for you get girlfriend, or you get husband, or you get wife. Find somebody who love you, will understand the problem. What are they very important in this country?
I cannot separate from Susan as she does.
Very important. Like it or hate it. It is not about you, it's about how the country turn. If you look at somebody really close you, who you trust, somebody really close you, one or two they work together, we understand you. Life will never be easy for you. It will never ever be easy for you. Because the beginning say for you born, you say we born in this country. You see, after a certain time, they want their own independence. They want their own life, they want their own way of doing things. They want to leave you inside the day, then go outside, they want to go. They want to do their own things. They don't want you to stop them. Then they want you to live on you. And most people are most of the people are not big. And that's the thing they get problems. But I'm again. And you know, let me know with you. If you don't get good husband, or you don't get good girlfriend, you don't get good family, let's say, no, a problem you don't take so. A problem you don't take so. And so tell that thing you don't 50, you don't 55, you don't 60, and then age and they forget man at this country, you know, easy. But to know, you don't make most men that you didn't tell me they're not serious. You say, not to drink, they drink, and this they do, not to that they do, and that they do. So tell you want one woman at least, you want husband, you know the people that say, to get love. I mean, there's love between harmony, and they talk, and they laugh, and they promote. That's in life. After all, this is not our eternal home. To the eternal home is we are all passengers. We are all visitors. Yeah, nobody knows that we are waiting forever. Nobody. That's what you Corona they tell me. Corona they tell me, say, don't continue the way it evolve by itself. This is how it starts. Now, don't continue the world we're not getting. 151 continue. We all get Corona. So, well. So you see, here's a human being. Who are we? We are all strangers. That short time we within Africa. If you live yourself up to 80 years, you are lucky. How many people are living with over 80 years? How many? If you live yourself up to 80 years, which kind of life you get from you? Right? After you know 60, which kind of life you get from you? Say you get 70. After you know 70, which kind of life you get from you? To follow a long life, I live quality long life. So, I tell you, take it. I tell you, I don't say that. I tell you, take it. I tell you, take it. You say me, I always protect myself. You know, it's fine. I'm always buying any kind of company. Follow me now. I'm always buying any kind of company. Not to somebody they go and sleep, go sleep, in a house. I know they drink, I know they smoke, you know. They just say, I'm not spending any kind of life. No, not going to spend any kind of life. I'm going to see now, I'm going to see now that today, and I see me another day. No, see? You don't say me get discipline life. So you see? All kind of life, and you talk to you tell you talk to you get your plan and you wait. You can just the person you talk to, you can just say you talk to me, yes. What you cannot plan and you wait different. So you're not going away this weekend. It's kind of like because you don't begin the arrest. And the arrest. Now you go out and they confront you. Say, hello, mister, where are you going? If I'm not telling you, say, well, I'm going to get some food, or I'm going to the pharmacy, or I'm going to see my GP, or I'm going to exercise for an hour. No. How you see, you say, well, okay, you have to go back home. And this is the first warning. We're warning you now, you have to go back home. And if you don't go, we'll arrest you. If you see they arrest you once, the second time, you'll be fine. No, sorry, the first time they will give you warning to go back home. The second time, they catch you again, you'll be fine. The third time, they put you in a court. Oh yeah, they're serious about it. Well, how many people be serious? How many people in your life? It's nice how they talk about soul. How many people don't die? It's the happens every people. I think until they affect people indirectly before they realize the seriousness of this thing. You don't know die. Go on a peace, not to war, not to terrorism, but on a peace. People they die like people they die so 500 a day, 600 a day. No, 600 people when they die a day under peace, not to terrorism, not to war. And not to hear the sick begin. What Spain? About 12,000 on buy so. 12,000. Some continent day. Like then Gambia. How many people in Gambia? Right? How many people there? Only people that we don't die. More than 1 million. They pass the number of people with the Gambia. You know? Gambia will reach 1 million. How many countries anyway get 1 million population? And not to war. Too much. Too much. Yes. You say yes. I've been doing on the PR for a very, very long time. Yes. All the I get about 6 months. All day on. I just send to the day. Yeah, if I I guess I will keep the company. Yeah, because I can put on a BBC One, I can put on a ITV, then I can put on a Sky, then I can put on America, CNN. One that is where I tell you one estimate. All the other ITV, BBC, and Sky, they give almost the same kind of news. So something I can change. So oh dear. Ebo? Yeah, well, can you send me by get? Okay. Well, I'll call you tomorrow. Yeah? I will do something. I'll call you tomorrow. Tell them madam I do for me, eh? Alright. Okay, later. Thank you very much. Man, I go for it. Very jigger.
Mr. Oliver to do the business. So I shouldn't waste any time. Surely I can't be. Then if you can't be, what would be?
To find a warehousing inside the country as well. It's an area that the industry is looking at the moment.
She's a city girl like me. Wish you could open your eyes. You've got such wonderful times. What would I do about Spear? Always get another maid. Never find another house like that. How is Oliver? I haven't seen him. I hope we don't have another
Pinnacle Studio is used.
For several weeks now, the world has been in the throes of uncertainty, and this has taken its toll on markets.
James was fond of Mr. Moon's father. Alright, will you play for us? We have deprived John of his support, so he deserves some consolation.
Rest easy on that score. I always rather join the ladies.
If you would excuse me, I want to dance a short flirt. Perhaps you'd like to play.
There will be pressures on costs, but at the same time, we also know that retailers will need to be selling on and making what they can from the supplies that they've already ordered. So our non-food retailers retailers have got
Your mum has contrived that we should be
fashion will be wanting to
left our own devices.
discount prices perhaps. There's still so many ways that our economy could move after this that will affect costs in a number of ways.
That's it. It used to be alone with me.
Pent-up demand as
I'd like to do the same.
begin to socialise more and begin to shop again. So it's possible that when shops do reopen, there'll be some it's impossible in certain areas to shift what they've ordered.
I tell you, my uncle is very pleased by the news for our engagement.
That's kind of thing.
Yes, because they're due to birth of a fortune.
Confident about placing the types of orders in the quantity that they have.
Are you pleased, John? That is what I cannot fathom.
You might find some real bargains, and then after that.
Well, my parents are glad, so is your mother. Or it must all marry someone, I suppose.
I see.
Oh, I guess they will do well enough, why shouldn't they? They want the same things.
Such as?
Well, a proper place in society, where we may do as we like. You don't know fair about that. When my uncle dies, we will be king and queen of all we survey.
Princess Theodora of Leiningen, she was called. Queen's half-sister by her mother's first marriage. They pushed her into the arms of a German prince in the 8th, and that was John Conroy's doing. He wanted her out of the way. When if they'd only waited, she could have been the queen herself.
You talk about them as if you knew them, Miss Alice, as if they were, well, like you and me.
And so they are, Stanley, just like you and me. Don't you ever think any different? Now that's fighting talk, Miss Alice. I'm ready for a fight, Mrs. Rust. If you're asking me to say I'm not as good as anyone upstairs, or in the palace for that matter, you'll worry the young ones if you're not careful.
I'm not worried. I'm inspired.
That's what I was afraid of.
Mr. Turner.
20% of jobs in warehousing, which EU nationals fill at the end of the transition period. And I'm wondering if these types of jobs...
I suppose we should let Mr. Bursis know when we go back to London.
...high demand will in fact...
Have you got something for me?
And in fact that's not a job.
I want to be sure we'll pay enough before I take any big risks.
I wouldn't pay too much. They never let us go. They wouldn't manage without us. Well, she could manage without me. We have history. And I'm too valuable.
That's not what the mistress was saying to Mrs. Oliver as they walked along the hallway earlier.
What did she say?
We can always find another maid. Those were her words. So why is she value now, Miss Alice?
So heavily to so much of our essentials and comforts. Right now, the supply chain.
So, how was it? Draining?
As draining as death. You're right. Charles Pope is very important to Mr. Trenchard.
Yes, I know that. I want to know why.
He talks about Mr. Pope's business, which infuriates Oliver. But then my mother-in-law said...
What?
She wasn't thinking, and she let it slip that it's not about business. And Mr. Pope is not a stranger. Make of that what you will.
Hello there.
What is Lady Barnhurst in all this? What's the matter? You're preoccupied.
Do I?
10 days after he tested positive for coronavirus.
Makes me very serious for me, Cedric. They won't hang you. They've abolished the bloody code, right, you heard? They won't hang me, no, but they will put me in prison. Petty treason by a servant against their master. Still a serious crime. But tomorrow is keys if I'm getting to his private desk. They searched his office. Carl's right there. They may work together, but it's a secret. Like the history of them both.
As the coronavirus lockdown enters its third week,
So it's the letters to get mention of the name.
The Westminster Hour. The main news tonight, Boris Johnson has been admitted to hospital for tests 10 days after he tested positive for coronavirus. The Queen has delivered a special address to the nation insisting we will meet again when the coronavirus pandemic is over. The Health Secretary has warned that exercising in public could be banned if social distancing restrictions continue to be flouted. Coming up, we'll get an update on the Prime Minister, who's in hospital overnight in what Number 10 say is a precautionary step on the advice of his doctor. As the coronavirus lockdown enters its third week, Labour's new... The main news tonight, Boris Johnson has been admitted to hospital for tests 10 days after he tested positive for coronavirus. The Queen has delivered a special address to the nation, insisting we will meet again when the coronavirus pandemic is over. The Health Secretary has warned that exercising in public could be banned if social distancing restrictions continue to be flouted. Coming up, we'll get an update on the Prime Minister, who's in hospital overnight in what Number 10 say is a precautionary step on the advice of his doctor. As the coronavirus lockdown enters its third week, Labour's new leader, Sir Keir Starmer, joins the fray and starts to form his new team. We'll hear about that. Joining me tonight from various locations in the country, the new Conservative MP but seasoned government advisor, Laura Trott, Andrew Gwynn, who was Shadow Communities Secretary under Jeremy Corbyn, and now waits to see if he'll continue to have a job, and the former Conservative Education Secretary, Justine Green. The New Statesman, Stephen Bush, also joins us, and we go back through the archives to see how COVID-19 compares to other historical pandemics.
Just about all the war years I've hit with the flu, it was really as great an enemy as they'd been fighting.
That's all coming up after the news, read for us this evening by Vigialis.
In the past hour, Downing Street has announced that the Prime Minister has been admitted to hospital for tests because he continues to have persistent symptoms of coronavirus. Boris Johnson was diagnosed with the disease 10 days ago. Number 10 described it as a precautionary step and said he remained in charge of the government. Our correspondent Helena Wilkinson reports.
The Prime Minister has been self-isolating in the flat above number 11 Downing Street since he tested positive for the virus. Mr Johnson has had symptoms for 10 days, including a high temperature. It's understood his admission to hospital earlier tonight wasn't as an emergency, and the decision was taken on the advice of his doctor. He's expected to stay in overnight and is having what Number 10 is describing as routine tests. Downing Street says the Prime Minister is in contact with ministerial colleagues and officials and remains in charge of the government. The Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, is expected to chair the government's coronavirus meeting tomorrow morning.
The Queen has said she believes that Britain will overcome the coronavirus pandemic if people remain united and resolute. In a rare address to the nation, she acknowledged that self-isolating may be hard at times, but concluded on an optimistic note, echoing the words of Dame Vera Lynn's wartime anthem by saying, "We will meet again." Our royal correspondent Johnny Diamond listened to her address.
This was an ambitious broadcast that aimed to reassure, to inspire and to recast the crisis as a collective effort to protect the most vulnerable. The Queen spoke of the disruption to everybody's lives. She thanked those on the front line of the NHS, care workers and those in essential roles. Together we are tackling this disease, she said, and if we remain united and resolute, we will overcome it. She urged people to think of their place in history. Those who come after us, she said, will say the Britons of this generation were as strong as any. Echoes of the Second World War rang through her speech. She referred at one point to her very first broadcast in 1940 to evacuated children when she herself was only 14. But she did not speak of conflict or struggle, and the attributes she emphasised were peaceful ones, of self-discipline, good-humoured resolve and fellow feeling. She said self-isolation may at times be hard, but it was also an opportunity to slow down, pause and reflect in prayer or meditation. We will succeed, she said, and that success will belong to every one of us.
We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
She closed, sending her thanks and warmest good wishes to everyone.
In the past few minutes, Catherine Calderwood has resigned as Scotland's Chief Medical Officer. Earlier, she apologised unreservedly for failing to properly follow lockdown rules she had promoted. Police had issued a warning to her after she twice visited her family's second home in Fife, in violation of rules to avoid unnecessary travel. The Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has warned that the government could ban outdoor exercise in public if people continue to ignore the social distancing rules designed to prevent the spread of coronavirus. He said the restrictions were mission critical to protecting the NHS and saving people's lives, although ministers were not planning any changes imminently. The deaths of another 621 people with the virus in the UK have been reported in the past 24 hours, nearly 100 fewer than yesterday. Our health editor, Hugh Pitt, reports.
On a dry, sunny Sunday in most parts of the country, the Health and Social Care Secretary felt the need to reinforce warnings to people to stay at home unless they were shopping for essentials or having one spell of exercise. Media pictures from some areas yesterday showed people relaxing on the beach, and in some cases groups of more than two. Some parks closed because too many people had ignored the official advice. This morning, Matt Hancock made it clear on the BBC that sunbathing in public places was not acceptable within the guidelines, and that if there was further evidence of people acting irresponsibly, further action might be taken. This afternoon at the Daily Downing Street news briefing, he reiterated his warning.
Following these rules is mission critical if we're to protect the NHS, slow the spread, and give the NHS time to expand capacity and so save lives. The more people follow the rules, then the faster we will all be through it. So I say this to the small minority of people who are breaking the rules or pushing the boundaries. You're risking your own life and the lives of others, and you're making it harder for us all.
The Health Secretary was also asked about the supply of ventilators for intensive care after the government made earlier urgent appeals to industry to step up production. He said there were currently between 9 and 10,000 in the system, and that 18,000 would be needed, rather than the 30,000 which had been mentioned at one stage. The peak of demand on the NHS as a result of COVID-19 cases is expected to start next week. Mr. Hancock didn't give a figure for how many ventilators would be installed by then, though he said the health service did currently have the capacity in place to deal with the caseload.
The new Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has begun appointing his shadow cabinet. Several figures who are close to Jeremy Corbyn have been sacked, with new appointments to senior positions, including the Shadow Chancellor and Shadow Foreign Secretary. Sir Keir said they would form part of a new coronavirus committee after he earlier criticised the mistakes made by the government in its response to the crisis. Our political correspondent, Chris Mason, has the details.
The cast list of any political leader's top team offers an early insight into their grip on their party and their political instincts. Gone are two faces close to Jeremy Corbyn, the former party chairman Ian Lavery and also John Trickett. Replacing John McDonnell in the crucial role of Shadow Chancellor, the former Shadow Treasury Minister Annalise Dodds. Lisa Nandy, who made the final three in the contest to replace Mr Corbyn, becomes Shadow Foreign Secretary, and Jonathan Ashworth remains as Shadow Health Secretary. The appointments made today form what Sir Keir Starmer is calling his Shadow COVID-19 Committee, as he pointedly sharpened the opposition's criticism of the government's response to the pandemic. He criticised Minister's record on testing and the problems delivering personal protective equipment to those in health and social care jobs, and demanded the publication of an exit strategy from the current restrictions. Sir Keir set out to the BBC's Andrew Marr how he would seek to hold the government to account.
We've all got a duty here to save lives and protect our country. And the Labour Party, under my leadership, will ask difficult questions, but only for the purpose of pointing out mistakes so they can be put right. So that's the approach I'm going to take, constructive engagement.
It was, he said, a period of national and global emergency. This afternoon, Sir Keir was briefed by telephone about the pandemic. He spoke to the country's most senior civil servants, the Cabinet Secretary, as well as England's Chief Medical Officer and Chief Scientific Advisor. The new Labour leader will announce more appointments to his shadow front bench tomorrow.
New rules have come into force in Italy, meaning people living in certain regions have to wear a face mask whenever they leave their home. Italy's outbreak is the worst in the world, with almost 16,000 people dying there so far. But there are signs the epidemic may have reached its peak, with the number of daily deaths beginning to fall. Our correspondent Jean Mackenzie has sent this report from Rome.
Face masks are now compulsory in the 3 regions which have been hit hardest by the virus, including Lombardy in the north. The order might soon be extended to other parts of the country. The strict measure comes at a critical time for Italy. The rate of infection has slowed here over the past week, and the number of daily deaths is down for the 2nd day in a row. But the health minister, Roberto Speranza, has said that Italians have to learn now to live with the virus until a vaccine is found. Authorities know that any recovery will be fragile. They're nervous about a further outbreak and say this is not the time to relax.
And Ireland's acting Prime Minister Leo Varadkar has re-registered as a medical doctor to help out during the coronavirus pandemic. His office said he would work for the health service once a week. Mr. Varadkar practiced medicine for 7 years before turning to politics. Reports say he will staff a telephone consultation line for people to ring if they think they've been exposed to the virus.
Thank you very much, Virgie. My guests for the Westminster Hour this evening are again not with me, but socially distancing from the comfort of their own homes. They are, for Labour, Andrew Gwynn, MP for Denton and Reddish in Greater Manchester. He's been Jeremy Corbyn's shadow community secretary. Big question, we have a place in the new leader, Sir Keir Starmer's team. Andrew, have you heard anything yet?
I've not heard anything. Look, these things, worry about the things you can change, not the things you can't.
Alright, well, look, we are going to talk more about the new team a little bit later. Let me introduce the rest of my panel. Laura Trott, my Conservative guest this evening, won the Sevenoaks seat in Kent last year, the first woman to win that constituency. Before that, she worked in Downing Street as an advisor to David Cameron and also as a communications specialist. And Laura sits on the Health Select Committee. So good evening to you, Laura.
Good evening, Caroline.
And welcome back, Justine Greening, Conservative MP for Putney for 14 years. She stood down at last year's election. She lost the Conservative whip in September 2019 and sat as an independent after that. Her last job in Cabinet was Education Secretary. She is the founder of the Social Mobility Pledge, which aims to encourage business organisations to commit to social mobility within the workforce. And we'll talk a bit about that later, Justine. Hello.
Hi.
Hello there. And also with us on the line is the New Statesman's Stephen Bush. And Stephen, could you take us through what we have been hearing in the last half hour? Because reaction to the news that the Prime Minister is in hospital for tests. What are Number 10 saying?
So it's a precautionary step on the advice of his doctor because he still has symptoms after 10 days, usually at the point at which if you have COVID-19 you expect to start feeling a recovery, but they've emphasised that he remains in charge of the government, the one running the show. Dominic Raab, who is the kind of designated number 2, is not yet been activated, as it were, but that's kind of I wouldn't say that's the big political story, but of course the other big political story is that the Chief Medical Officer of the Scottish Government, Catherine Calderwood, has resigned after it emerged and she had visited her second home in 2 successive weekends, despite urging people in Scotland to do what people in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are all being urged to do as well, which is to stay home and avoid unnecessary travel.
Yeah, this comes as there's been lots of talk about what the government should do if people continue to flout the guidance. Let's just stick with what's happening to Boris Johnson for a moment then. And Justine Greening, you've been inside the Cabinet. How do you think the Cabinet will be greeting this news? And really, can the Prime Minister carry on duties as normal, be in charge of the government when he's in hospital overnight for tests?
Well, I really wish Boris well. I've messaged him to send him all my best wishes, and I think our thoughts are not just with him, but everyone else who's been affected by coronavirus. As for the Cabinet, I'm sure that over the last week or so they have been working very effectively with Boris, obviously not there in person, and so I don't think it will have a dramatic effect. I just do think that everybody obviously will be keen to see him getting better and back at his desk as soon as he can.
And Andrew Gwynn, you have had coronavirus and you had to isolate. Tell me what it's like and tell our listeners how Boris Johnson may be feeling at the moment.
Well, if it's anything like I had, it's pretty grotty. It sounds as though the Prime Minister has got it far more seriously than I had it. I wasn't tested, so I can only guess that what I had was coronavirus. But all the symptoms were there. But the thing that was the worst for me was the chronic fatigue and tiredness that followed for days after all the other symptoms have gone. But look, I want to say this, Carolyn. I'm from a different political party to Boris Johnson. I do disagree with him on lots of things. Famously clashed with him in the 2017 general election. That's politics. He's our Prime Minister at a time of crisis, and I sincerely wish him, and Carrie Symonds for that matter, a speedy recovery, and I hope he's well soon.
Laura, it's quite unusual to have a Prime Minister in hospital. I mean, I remember when Tony Blair was taken ill at Chequers after concern that he had an irregular heartbeat, and he was taken in for tests. Downing Street are at pains now to say, look, it's on the advice of his doctor, the Prime Minister's just in overnight for tests. How do you greet this news?
Well, it's obviously horrible news, but I'm reassured, as you say, that it's precautionary, it's on the advice of doctors, and it's obviously the right thing to do to follow this medical advice. And I think it's just a reminder of just how serious this virus is, and why it's so important that everyone continues to take the measures that we need to take to keep the country safe.
Well, yeah, and that's where it brings us on to what we were just touching on with Dr. Catherine Calderwood has resigned from the Scottish Government. She was the Chief Medical Officer there. She's fallen foul of the rules that she set herself. She visited her second home in Fife against her own advice and has now decided to go. I mean, are you worried that people flouting the guidance now might lead to parks being closed and outside exercise being banned altogether as the government tries to get a grip on this?
I think on the specific point about the Scottish CMO, it's a matter for the Scottish Government, but the basic point is these rules are for everyone, and they are incredibly important, and they are rules. This is not advice the government is giving. Everyone has to stay home to protect the NHS, to help save lives, and I think that I'm very worried personally about the idea of not being able to take my kids outside to exercise. I'm sure many people are, which is why it's so important we come back to the point that everyone sticks to the rules.
The difficulty is, though, Justine, I mean, a lot of people don't have a garden to sit in, when it's lovely weather. What are they supposed to do?
I think it is difficult, and it's important that people do follow the rules. I think it's also important that the government always stays close to public opinion and explains why those rules are important to people, and I think also helps them understand how they can comply with them. So it may be straightforward and easy for ministers to know, but I think there are some questions that people are asking. Certainly in London, where I am, a lot of people live in flats and will absolutely want to get some time to get some fresh air every day, and that might well be for some really important for their mental health. So I think more information to help people understand is absolutely crucial, and I think that's probably the first thing for ministers to look at before they get to the next step of taking more draconian action, although of course they have to follow the scientific advice, and so I'm not surprised if that remains on the table.
Well, Andrew, Sir Keir Starmer is being briefed on this. He's joining briefings this week, and I wonder whether he will recommend that, yes, the guidance needs to be tightened. What do you think?
Well, I think we have to listen to what the scientific evidence is, what all the advisors are saying, and we have to look at it in the round, because, as has already been said, for some people, the opportunity to go outside in a public place is their only opportunity to go outside. If you live in flats, you don't have access to private gardens. So really what we've got to do is to get the message out as loudly as possible that small minority of people run the risk of spoiling it for everybody. Play by the rules, because this is about saving lives. It is about squashing that curve and ensuring that our NHS can cope at the peak of this crisis. We've all got to play by these rules, as was said earlier, I think by Laura. This isn't advice. These are our instructions. Social distancing is important so that we don't spread unwittingly this coronavirus, which is a nasty virus that can ultimately lead to death.
You're saying everyone should play their part. Well, Her Majesty the Queen has played hers. She's delivered a royal address to the nation. It's exceedingly rare. The previous 4 occasions, apart from 2012's Diamond Jubilee moment, have been times of war or sorrow, but this evening at 8 o'clock was the moment for her 5th such address during the depth of this coronavirus crisis, and the country tuned in to hear the monarch's message. Stephen, how much of a moment do you think was this? And just summarise the main sentiment that she expressed.
So the main sort of message of her speech was, we should be very proud of ourselves for following these rules. We should be very proud of the people who continue to go out and have to work normally, so people who work in the NHS as delivery drivers, other key workers who keep us all safe and keep us all fed during this period, and we're having to stay in our homes. And to say, yes, there may be dark times ahead, but don't worry, normality will eventually return and we will meet each other again. It was, I think, a very powerful moment, partly because, the benefit of having a non-political head of state is that because she doesn't speak very often, it really brought home it brought home the reality of it. Obviously, I haven't really gone out today, or indeed since those guidelines came in, but actually hearing the Queen speak, you don't hear speak all that often. Particularly if you tend to give it a miss on Christmas Day. I think it really has made a lot of people think, okay, this is very serious. And also, it has made me feel quite proud, particularly of the NHS and delivery workers. And I think actually that message she had about other key workers who aren't just doctors, nurses, people workers is so important too. Because one thing that the government is very concerned about, and one of the things that people who work in supermarkets are very concerned about, is people trying to police other people who they perceive to breaking the rules, who actually are vital key workers themselves. So I think it was a very effective speech that will have the desired effect.
Yeah, it was really nice to hear those tributes, wasn't it, to those people working so hard for their communities as well. Laura, do you think people might pay more attention to the Queen than they do to politicians?
Well, I hope they pay attention to both, but I think one of the really small glimmers of hope in all of this has been, I think as a society, there have been moments where we've come together. This is all such a shared experience, and I felt a little bit of that this evening. You're sitting there watching, knowing that millions of people throughout the country are doing the same thing, and I hope that it will help bring us together post this crisis and show how reliant we are on each other, and especially how reliant we are on the NHS and the people that support us there.
Obviously, the logistical crisis and the logistical problems of dealing with this, Justine, for the Cabinet it's difficult enough. You were International Development Secretary, weren't you, during the Ebola crisis? That was in West Africa. It was 2014 to 16, which had huge consequences for the people there. Are there any comparisons that you might draw between the two crises?
Well, I think both need 3 parts of action for them to be successfully dealt with. One, of course, is getting the right strategy, but the other 2 parts are implementing that and then communicating it. And I think the government's found that it's very, very hard to do those 3 things together effectively when things are moving so quickly. The key thing for us on Ebola was to not only work with Sierra Leone to stamp it out, because we knew as we got to Europe and took hold that it would be absolutely devastating, and we methodically worked out what that plan was, the different elements of it, and then just worked to put it in place and stuck with it. And at the end of the day, we were successful. We had a lot of data, we understood what capacity we needed, we were tracking things, but the proof of the pudding was in the eating, and we were successful in stamping it out. I think we'll be successful in overcoming coronavirus, but these difficult days in the middle of that whole thing are hard for people, and I think going back to the Queen, her message to the nation was very timely, because of course I think what lies ahead for us this coming week is perhaps the most difficult week we'll have to endure as a nation so far on coronavirus.
Yeah, the government's faced criticism, hasn't it, for the way it's handled things like the ventilators, the tests. The criticism has started to come day by day.
It is difficult, and I think the government's had to run to standstill really on implementing the strategy that it's put in place. Incidentally, the Chief Medical Officer is Chris Whitty, and he was my Chief Scientific Advisor in DFID when we were tackling Ebola, so I know he'll certainly give his best advice, but this is a monumental challenge for ministers. I certainly know they're working around the clock, and I think it's why it's so important that we do pull together. Of course there'll be questions asked about what was done, how it was done. There are always lessons to be learned, but right now the focus of everyone's attention really needs to be on pulling together, whether you're a government minister implementing a strategy, whether you're a member of the public staying at home to keep the pressure off the NHS, or indeed whether you're a business hopefully supporting your employees through this, your customers, and hopefully a wider community. And that's some of the wider work that I've been doing over recent weeks, trying to get businesses to play their roles too.
Yeah, okay, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Andrew, now the first thing that Sir Keir Starmer did as Labour's new leader was talk to Boris Johnson and agree to join those briefings. But one of your colleagues yesterday suggested to me that Sir Keir should be a bit wary about doing that, about being brought into the tent, if you like, and then having to perhaps share the blame when or if things go wrong. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't see it like that, Carolyn. I think that absolutely our number one priority right now needs to be acting in the national interest on coronavirus. And indeed, for the last few weeks, I've been engaging in my perhaps previous role as Shadow Communities Secretary with ministers in the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, making sure that the voice of local councils that are dealing with the coronavirus crisis on the ground is heard, and that ministers work alongside the official opposition in getting and shaping those new rules, those regulations and those laws. So I absolutely think we have to be supportive of the crucial steps that the government's making, but this also means providing a critical eye on how the government's handling COVID-19, so that mistakes like some of the ones that you've mentioned about ventilators and testing aren't repeated. And look, we're not going to shy away from calling out the government when it gets things wrong, but nor will we be playing politics with this issue. We have to come together.
And Laura, do you like this idea of bringing together the opposition figures? I mean, some people have even talked of a government of national unity to tackle this crisis. Could you countenance going that far?
I think it's absolutely right that the Prime Minister is bringing in opposition leaders and that they are involved in this and involved in the discussions as they go on. However, I'm very wary of an idea of national government, just because I think the opposition have a key role to play. As Andrew said, the scrutiny is actually very important. And sitting in Parliament and watching Jonathan Ashworth, the Shadow Health Secretary, actually in a very constructive way look at what the government is doing, point out holes, point out where things can be different. I think that's actually very important, and I don't think we should take that away by going into a government of national unity.
Now, Stephen, Jonathan Ashworth has in fact kept his job, hasn't he, in the new Keir Starmer team. Andrew and others in the Shadow Cabinet have got to wait until tomorrow at least to find out if they've got a place, but he has been naming some of the key figures today. Tell us about them.
Yes, so he's named his COVID-19 Action Committee, which is obviously the Shadow Health Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth, who keeps his role partly because he's seen essentially by almost everyone around Westminster to had a very good crisis, to have been both constructive but critical. He's appointed Annalise Dodds, the Oxford East MP, previously Shadow Financial Secretary of the Treasury, as his Shadow Chancellor, Nick Thomas-Symonds, a Welsh MP, previously a Justice Minister, but with quite a lot of front-bench experience because his Secretary of State, Shadow Chakrabarty, is in the Lords, so he was the one responding to Geoffrey Cox, the Shadow Home Secretary, and has promoted Lisa Nandy, one of his rivals for the leadership, to be Shadow Foreign Secretary, as well as bringing Rachel Reeves back from Select Committee Chair role to be Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, which is that amorphous but very important role Michael Gove holds, where he's both in charge of the future EU-UK relationship, but crucially much of the coronavirus response. And what unifies all of those people is they're very much from the mainstream of the Labour Party, kind of its traditional centre. Some like Rachel Reeves are more to the right of that traditional centre, others like Annalise Dodds seen as more to the left of it, but they are very much, if you imagine the Labour Party as a spectrum ranging from Tony Blair on one end to Jeremy Corbyn on the other, very much from the middle tendency, and in many ways they're very much in Keir Starmer's own image, even the ones who ran against him, competent operators from the centre of the party.
Several figures close to Jeremy Corbyn have lost their jobs. What job do you think he'll give, if he will, to Rebecca Long-Bailey?
Hello? Well, I think it's actually it's a big question for him, right? Because he's committed to give a job to all of the candidates who ran against him. So Emily Thornley has been confirmed will survive. Her role is unknown. Now, although this is going to be broadly similar to what Corbyn offered, it's going to be a little bit to the right of it. And I think he'll want to have his own person in at Shadow Base, because one of the opportunities they think is there is although the government has a very strong and healthy economic offer to salaried workers, it hasn't been as effective or as quick at offering that level of certainty to the self-employed and to some small businesses who really feel they've been left out in the cold. And that kind of makes some people around Keir feel that if you have someone from the right of the party who's more business friendly, say Johnny Reynolds or David Lammy or Shion Mura, then perhaps you'd be able to build some friendships that might be useful for the long term. So perhaps you give Rebecca Long-Bailey a role in welfare, where the Labour Party policy on the family needs a little pain. But what he does with Becky Long-Bailey will be is the big remaining plate he has to juggle in terms of his pledge to have a broad, unified party, while sending the signal he wants to send about this being a changed Labour Party.
Well, Andrew, Jeremy Corbyn said that he felt vindicated in Labour's approach on the economy by the way that the government has decided to intervene with all of those measures to tackle the coronavirus crisis. But there will, of course, be big questions about how to pay for all the billions of borrowing. Where do you think Sir Keir Starmer is going to place himself, and how much emphasis will he put on ensuring that health and social care have a solid funding base in future, that those workers get adequately paid? And do you think you could ever be in favour of, say, a ring-fenced income tax or national insurance rise to pay for health and social care in future, when we've passed the crisis and we're looking at how to pay for it and how to move forward?
You've hit the nail on the head there, because the Parliament will run properly until 2024. We will be facing a very different set of circumstances at the next general election to the previous two, 2017 and 2019. And I think we will have some very serious lessons to learn from what happened from 2010, after the global financial crash and the coalition government coming in, until very recently with austerity. I think it would be a big mistake to look at the challenge of coronavirus, the financial difficulties that will be caused because of the coronavirus crisis, and to say we have to go back to the policies of 2010 to 2019. I think what we've really got to recognise is that the resilience of our public services, whether that's the NHS, whether it's social care, or whether it's core local services provided by local government, we have to properly invest in our communities. We have to invest in those in the long-term vision of the country. And yes, that may mean having a more radical approach towards tax and spending going forward.
Ring-fencing, just in a word, ring-fencing income tax or national insurance to pay for health and social care, perhaps?
Well, look, that's always been an idea out there, the hypothecation of taxes. We've got 4 years now to set out our stall, but I do know that we have to be genuinely radical, but we have to face the future and the challenges of 2024 and beyond, not what happened in the past.
All right, well, Laura, you worked in Downing Street as an advisor to David Cameron, so you were there through those years of austerity. Where do you think this goes on, and how do you respond to what Andrew's just said?
Well, I think we are only in a position whereby we are able to respond to this because the UK finances were in a better place. You can see, if we hadn't taken the steps that we have done since 2010, that we would have a real issue with government borrowing at this stage. Now, what I think the Chancellor has done is totally right. It is a huge, world-leading package of support for business, which will hopefully alleviate the supply side shock that otherwise would be in place. Now, what I would hope to see is coming out of this is that we'll alleviate that supply side shock. There will be a demand side shock, but that will come away with time. This is not like the financial crisis where there were structural problems with the economy. So my hope would be able to step forward, go on, and business can recover from where we are because of the support that's been in place.
Well, Justin, you've launched something called the C19 Pledge to encourage business to place part during the crisis and with the recovery after the government has done right by business. It sounds like you think there's still much more to be done.
Well, I think the government's put in place an unprecedented package. I think Rishi Sunak is right to keep looking at it to make sure it actually gets money out to companies that need it quickly, and I suspect the Treasury will have to continue to revisit some of those initiatives that's been in place to make sure they are effective. I think there's a bit of a deal here, isn't there? The deal is that government is trying to look after and support business, and then through the C19 Business Pledge, I guess what I'm saying is there's a real opportunity for businesses themselves to then support their employees, their customers, and a wider community. And I think if we are able to have those pieces in place, then that's how we'll have a Britain that can bounce back as strongly as possible. But I think there will be a wider issue that we all need to confront, which is there are some systemic gaps in our society on inequality of opportunity. Those gaps get widened by coronavirus, with kids out of school, with graduates probably coming onto a jobs market that is far less healthy than any in years. And I think the government and all of us will really need to ask searching questions about how, if there are going to be, in the short term at the very least, fewer opportunities, that we do make sure that there are opportunities that are accessible by everyone fairly.
You and Laura have both talked a lot about social mobility, and you, Justine, have worked very hard on that and continue to outside government. How do you greet the news then from last week? Your former Conservative colleague Robert Halfon, who chairs the Education Select Committee, he said to me perhaps that schools and Parliament shouldn't return after the Easter break. Would you think that that would be a wise thing to do, Justine?
Well, I think any time out of school is bad for children. The government has to be guided by the scientific advice. The point I would make is, if we do end up in a situation, as we may well do, where schools are out really until September, then we know that, for example, even over the 6 weeks summer break, that some children will fall back because they will stop their studying effectively at home, and they won't be in the home learning environment that supports it, and so that effect will be even more pronounced. And I think Boris Johnson has put levelling up at the heart of his government. That is absolutely right in my opinion. I think his challenge becomes even greater because of coronavirus, but in a way that makes it even more important that he has a smart, systemic, holistic strategy that really has every single department of government focused on this as a top priority.
Laura, you were responsible for education and family policy, weren't you, under David Cameron? So what do you think are the pros and the cons of keeping youngsters away from school during this crisis?
One of the things that has been really important about the way this has been designed is that vulnerable kids can still go to school. One of the things I've been talking about with my local county council is how many of those children are actually turning up, and I think this is something that we'll need to continue to monitor and make sure is happening, because I think by and large, if it's a term, it's not ideal, but it can be managed. But it's those vulnerable kids that I'm particularly concerned about, and I think that we need to make sure are still turning up to school and getting that education, because it may be that's the only way they're going to get the hot meal. In terms of falling behind, they won't have the resources necessarily in the family to provide that education at home. So I think that's a bit that we're going to have to watch throughout all of this.
What about Parliament then, Andrew? There are discussions taking place about how Parliament could return during the pandemic if it does. Maybe MPs take part in Prime Minister's questions and debates via video if they're unable to return to work after the Easter recess. What do you make of all this talk of a virtual Parliament, maybe extending even further that trial of committee hearings that was regarded as working pretty well just before Easter?
Well, I think we've got to think out of the box here, because what we can't have is democracy on hold throughout this crisis, because yes, it's important that the opposition and backbench MPs from across the House of Commons can hold the government to account, can work constructively with the government, but most importantly be able to raise directly with ministers the concerns of local business people, of local families who might be suffering because of the lack of support for their particular family circumstances.
Can't you do that virtually? I mean, as we're speaking now.
We can do it virtually, and that's one of the things that I've supported a letter, the cross-party letter that was penned by Kean Worra, the Labour MP for Newcastle. And I think that we can get round this. Look, local government is being asked to hold virtual council meetings, and if local government can do it, so can Parliament. I know Parliament's a lot bigger, but we can work round this. We can have an elongated order paper, so there'll be no bobbing opportunities at question time, but everybody on a longer list of on the order paper will know that they can ask their questions to the Minister. I think that is really important, so that whether it's our constituents that are stuck abroad, or our local businesses, or families in need, we can still raise these important issues directly with ministers.
And Laura, you've taken part in Health Select Committee hearings remotely, haven't you? How was that?
I actually think it worked rather well. It has to be very ordered as a result of being done digitally, and I think in many ways it added to the process.
But I mean, it is difficult because you've got to rely on the line working and the Wi-Fi working properly, and can you really get a proper sense of what your contributors are saying if it's all done down the line?
I think the technical side of things is definitely a challenge, but in terms of the technological interface, I found it quite easy to put a question forward. There was lots of interactions with the committee over WhatsApp while it was going on, so people could organise their questions, and we were communicating with in terms of when our terms are coming up. So I thought that actually worked relatively well. I was happy because I think it continues the scrutiny, which I agree with Andrew is incredibly important.
Could you do it for PMQs though, do you think? I mean, that would take quite a lot of technical know-how, wouldn't it?
Well, as Andrew said, you know if you're on the order paper anyway. The only bit that would be different is there's an opportunity to, as I say, bob, which is stand up and indicate that you want to make a question to the speaker. That will be more difficult to do, but I think we just have to go in a more orderly fashion and make sure that we switch between parties as we go through. So I think it can be done, and I think it should be done because it's important that scrutiny continues, but we make sure that we are abiding by those guidelines that are so important to keep us all safe.
Well, Justine, what do you think? I mean, you're watching it from the outside now, though, but I mean, you know, Parliament is due back, I think, on the 21st of April. Do you think that's possible? I mean, after that, in May, there are plenty of recess dates as well, because there's VE Day and then there's Whitsun. Do you think maybe they should just cut the cloth and plan a return for the end of May? Would that be more sensible?
Well, I think the rules are the rules, and so at the moment it doesn't look like Parliament's going to be coming back later this month, but I do think that there is no reason why you can't have some of these virtual ways of MPs holding ministers and the government to account. As we've just heard, select committees can still take evidence. You can easily table parliamentary questions and have them answered remotely. I think what you miss is the cut and thrust of debate, but at the end of the day, this is clearly a time of crisis, and I think we do have to think outside the box, as Andrew said, to work out how we can get that balance between keeping everyone safe, including MPs, but also making sure that our democracy functions at such an important time. And obviously now Labour have a leader that's part of that, because they are the opposition, and it's their role to constructively, as Keir Starmer's said today, hold the government to account.
And Stephen, just to put on the record then, I mean, Parliament would have to reconvene in Westminster in order to vote and approve on setting up a virtual parliament, wouldn't it?
Well, yes, so the mace would physically have to be placed there, but in terms of the standing orders of the House, if you don't force a division, and there is broadly consensus on this, you actually don't need everyone to go through the sort of palaver of being in there. I mean, the big thing is, although you can do most of the scrutiny remotely, and some scrutiny is better than no scrutiny, if you think about some of those big select committee chair events, like Yvette Cooper exposing Amber Rudd over the Windrush scandal, one of the things which was very clear then was the physical proximity allows you to notice when a civil servant or a minister is perhaps not being straight with you. And I think that is an unavoidable loss, but yeah, you just got to accept it, I think.
All right, well, look, let's move on, because in her address to the nation earlier, the Queen hoped that in years to come, everyone will be able to take pride in how they responded to the coronavirus challenge. She said, "I hope that those who come after us will say that the Britons of this generation were as strong as any." But for historians, this, of course, is not the first generation to be struck by a pandemic. People talk about the tens of millions who died in the post-World War I Spanish flu. That was, in fact, just one of 3 pandemics in the 20th century, and a further 2 occurred in the first decade of the 21st century. So how were those outbreaks dealt with? How do politicians deal with questions around healthcare, the economy, public information? Jack Fenwick reports.
Autumn 1918. After 4 long years of war, soldiers were finally returning home to their families. But as the last sounds of mortar fire rang out over the Western Front, few could have predicted that an even deadlier episode in history was just beginning.
Mother died the next day. She was 34. Dad died in the early hours of Monday. So survived all the war years and so much danger. When hit with the flu, it was really as great an enemy as they'd been fighting.
H1N1 influenza, nicknamed Spanish flu, killed at least 50 million people across the globe, more than every First World War battle combined. So how did the government respond? Professor Sally Sherd is a public health historian at the University of Liverpool.
The government was quite laissez-faire, quite reactive. It wanted to wait and see how things emerged. There was very little proactive response from the chief medical officer then, a chap called Arthur Newsom, and he really left it to the local medical officers of health to take initiatives. There was discussion in the newspapers, there was concern about whether they should be going for more active containment measures. They did shut schools, they did shut places of entertainment, but that came in quite late.
By 1920, the outbreak had died down, and it was to be almost 40 years before the world was once again beset by a pandemic.
I'm so young and you're so old.
In 1957, Christopher Potter was a national serviceman in the Royal Army Medical Corps. He was later interviewed for the Radio 4 documentary The Flu Race.
When influenza broke out in 1957 in China, it spread to Hong Kong, where the British had troops stationed at the time. 2 of these young Fusiliers, aged 23, were flown back to this country and they were ill. They were diagnosed as having the new influenza. We carried out the diagnosis, and I was part of the panic that occurred when we heard that the 2 had died.
But despite the new strain of flu being far less lethal than that of 1918, once again the government response was seen as sluggish. Professor of Public Health, Sally Sherd.
When we have the Asian flu outbreak in 1957, and that kills between 1 and 4 million people worldwide, and there are 33,000 deaths in the UK in 1957 from flu. The Minister of Health is a chap called Dennis Vosper. He's one of the shortest tenure Ministers of Health we've ever had. He was in post for just 8 months between January and September 1957. So he really came into this with not much experience of handling these enormously complicated health crises.
We'll
But this time, the virus didn't stay away for long. A little over 10 years later, a new form emerged.
Once again, news of influenza is with us. Mao flu, or A2 Hong Kong 1968 flu to be more precise. It broke out, so it's believed, in southern China and reached Hong Kong in epidemic form sometime in June and July.
Conservative peer Ian McCall was a young surgeon at the time, but despite 80,000 people dying of flu that year in the UK, without a 24-hour news media, he remembers the medical profession being far less worried than today.
I don't remember it being sort of very scary at all at that time. Mind you, working in hospital, we were a bit sort of isolated from it. General practice probably bore the brunt of it.
He says a major difference to the coronavirus response now was the absence of politicians in the public eye.
Well, I think they just got on with the job and weren't really attacked by the media, and so I think they were fairly relaxed in the sense that they could behave in a sensible way and a rational way, so they weren't sort of hassled the whole time.
Kennedy Shortridge was a professor who moved to Hong Kong in the early days of the outbreak. There, he developed a theory that influenza in humans could have originated in birds. He spoke to Radio 4 in 1999.
Trying to explain that we're going to get a human disease by looking at animals took a lot of convincing, but after a while it was becoming clear that we had a lot of viruses in the environment, and those viruses are knocking at the door year after year, possibly to give rise to a pandemic.
And in 1997, Professor Shortridge's theory was proved right.
RTHK, it's 9 o'clock, the news summary. The hospital authority has announced that another 3 suspected cases of bird flu have been detected.
By this time, Ian McCall had been appointed as Shadow Health Minister. While he remembers discussions around pandemic planning being fairly rare, there was one topic which still resonates today.
Certainly with ventilators, I can remember discussion about that and making sure we got enough of them, but not a great deal of discussion, no.
Just 5 years later, the SARS outbreak in Asia was seen by the world as a near miss. And then, in 2009, the H1N1 strain that wreaked havoc in 1918 returned.
I wake up every day, it's a daydream. Everything in my life ain't what it seems. I wake up just to go back to sleep. I act real shallow, but I'm in too deep.
This morning's headlines. The Health Protection Agency says it expects swine flu to reach Britain.
Swine flu has arrived in Europe with a confirmed case in Spain.
The Scottish Government has confirmed the first 2 cases of swine flu in Britain.
By the end of the outbreak, swine flu had killed around 450 people in the UK. But the media culture had changed, and that meant the government response had to change too. Professor Sally Sherd.
So with the internet we have very rapid dissemination of news. We have rolling 24-hour news, and there is a greater public awareness and public appetite to be updated on a regular basis.
Daily press conferences, similar to those taking place now, were introduced to meet that public appetite. But behind closed doors, the picture wasn't quite so clear.
What they hadn't got was the National Pandemic Flu Service up and running as they'd hoped to be able to do, so they put the Health Protection Agency in first. But by July, the National Health Service was trying to take that role over. There was enormous confusion about who was doing what. There were lack of premises, lack of staff, lack of software to do the modelling.
And Sally Sherd says that if politicians are to successfully deal with the current pandemic and any others in the future, they need to look to the past.
We need to make sure that history and historians are embedded in the policy-making process. There's a lot of value to being able to have that rapid review, that contextualisation, and it opens up a range of the possibilities then for how you can develop good evidence-based policy.
That's Sally Sherd ending that report from Jack Fenwick. And Laura, the politicians' focus, of course, at the moment is dealing with the immediate crisis, and we have the Prime Minister himself in a hospital trying to get treatment for those symptoms. But, you know, this has been a global crisis, and do you anticipate in the long run reviews, inquiries, maybe public inquiries, independent inquiries into what happened and how governments reacted? And can those sorts of inquiries really be anything more than a blame game, do you think?
Do you mean internationally or domestically?
Well, I mean both. You know, will we have an inquiry here into what went wrong and what went right and what governments could do better next time?
Absolutely. I think we will and we should. It's important, I think, when looking at a response to work out if and from the sounds of your reports, when this happens again, how we can learn from what we've done, build on it for next time. So I think that's incredibly important. I think internationally, again, we do need to look at this, but I think what is critical is that it is done in a principle of realising that we're very interconnected as a world now. If the pandemic starts somewhere, it can't be stopped from spreading worldwide. So I think international cooperation coming out of the back of this will be the most critical point.
But the government had exercises done to prepare for a possible pandemic, hadn't it? We'd heard about that, and yet it still didn't seem to be prepared for it.
I think there's been a huge amount of planning that's gone on, and actually a lot of that has made us more able to cope with that. If you look at things like being able to build the NHS Nightingale in London in 9 days, it's a phenomenal achievement. Also, the stock of personal protective equipment, PPE, we have a huge amount. Yes, there have been supply issues, but actually the amount of stock we have has been in place because of that pandemic plan.
A lot of health workers have been unhappy about it, haven't they?
Yes, and there have been distribution issues, and there have been distribution issues in several other places. But by and large, the stock has been there, which is a huge achievement if you look at other countries. So if there have been issues, absolutely, but I do think that there are lessons that we do need to learn. But I think there has been some good planning which has been put in place, which has allowed us to respond to some aspects of this very well.
We'll anticipate the inquiries. Now, Stephen Bush has been looking through the front pages. Tomorrow's papers are in. What have they got, Stephen?
Well, I mean, it's really two stories. We Will Meet Again is the Sun's angle, obviously the Queen's very rare public speech. But the main story, of course, is Boris Johnson taking ill. That's the Telegraph link Johnson taking to hospital for coronavirus treatment. Boris Johnson admitted to hospital with coronavirus, the Guardian's treatment. But there's a very interesting quote on that in the Telegraph, in which one Tory MP says that you should stop trying to copy Winston Churchill's leadership during the Second World War, and said that another cabinet needs to take charge so he can fight the virus. You don't hold the camera up and look grim, it's not going to inspire the nation. He's written too many books on Churchill, wants to be the guy, he needs to be Boris Johnson and not try to be someone else.
Let me just get a quick reaction to that from Justine. Do you think maybe he should just, let somebody else take charge, get well?
It's cabinet government, the faster he gets well, the better. I think we all wish him well.
Does he need to hand over to somebody else now, for the moment, just to get well?
If he's incapable of taking decisions as Prime Minister, then clearly somebody else needs to be in that position. I don't get the sense at all that Boris Johnson is anywhere close to being incapable of taking decisions as Prime Minister. So I think that question really doesn't arise right now. So I think the key is Cabinet working effectively as a team under his leadership to rise to the challenge of tackling what is an unprecedented health crisis globally and also in the UK. And I think if we're learning one thing, is that a healthy global economy needs healthy people, and these things go hand in hand, and there will be lessons to be learned after this. I think for the UK, we did learn some lessons after Ebola, but clearly this has been a crisis that's hit our own shores, and I think has stretched government beyond what it thought it could probably cope with, but it's nevertheless doing its best.
And Stephen, Dominic Raab is going to, the Foreign Secretary will chair tomorrow's War Cabinet on measures to tackle the disease we hear. And also that story in Scotland is on a couple of the front pages, isn't it?
Yes, the Scotsman, of course, goes with the Hippocratic Oath. The Metro goes with the oath spelled incorrectly, as in OAF, as in all the pressure on Catherine Calwood has now told. But I think the really big implication here is now she's stepped down, it will raise questions about Nicola Sturgeon's judgment at a time in which enemies within the SNP are already circling because of Alex Salmond's acquittal in his trial, and it really, I think, is going to only increase the amount of questions about whether or not perhaps this is a sign that she's got governmentitis, she didn't spot how much anger there was going to be among the voters, maybe it's time for a change. And I think one of the interesting consequences of coronavirus which we might have thought might have been Nicola Sturgeon's salvation, is, I think, it's only going to intensify those questions.
And Stephen, just a final point in our final minute. The fact is, we've got a new Labour leader after months of campaigning. I can see one tiny picture of Sir Keir Starmer on the front of the FT. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it makes complete sense why the Labour Party is being going off the new agenda, but Keir's pitch and big idea really is what you could do to gain quick wins at the start of his leadership was provide essentially a better class of organism, more effective parliamentary opposition, following up on UQs, coordinating with select committee chairs. But there is no policy agenda other than fighting COVID-19 on which they are completely united with the government in wanting to do that. And so I think this does show that it does raise existential questions about his approach and is he going to have to do things significantly differently to how he planned.
And Andrew Gwynn, in 10 seconds, your thoughts on that? 10 seconds.
Well, it's obviously difficult to get political cut through, but ultimately we cannot change people's lives if we don't win. Keir understands this, and that's why I backed him in the contest.
That is all we have time for tonight, so thanks to all my guests, Stephen Bush, Laura Trott, Justine Greening and Andrew Gwynn. We're taking a break next weekend for Easter Sunday, but we will be back at the usual time on Sunday the 19th of April, so join me then if you can. For now, from all of us here at the Westminster Hour, a very good night to you, and thanks so much for joining us this evening.
The editor of the Westminster Hour was Lucy Post. And after the news, the impact of COVID-19 on one British filmmaker. The film programme is in 3 minutes.
It's very difficult. It's going to change everyone's life.
The impact of the coronavirus crisis.
There are a lot of people out there who haven't got anyone around them.
For those who give their time to help the vulnerable.
If you're fit and able and can offer a helping hand, now's probably the time to be doing it.
On BBC Radio 4, Grace Dent presents The Untold.
I think we've had over thousands new sign-ups to volunteer in the last just over 48 hours.
Beginning with The Virus Between Us.
I just hope I can stay strong and stay positive about it all.
Tomorrow morning at 11.
BBC News at 11 o'clock. Boris Johnson has been admitted to hospital for tests 10 days after testing positive for coronavirus. Downing Street says he continues to have persistent symptoms, including a high temperature, but that it's a precautionary step on the advice of his doctor. Mr. Johnson remains in charge, but the Foreign Secretary and First Secretary of State, Dominic Raab, will chair the government's morning meeting on coronavirus. Henry Hill from the Conservative Home website says there are some decisions that only a Prime Minister can make.
When we come out of lockdown, whether we come out of lockdown anytime soon, what state the economy's in, you cannot have the Cabinet working out between themselves the answers to some of these questions. So if the Prime Minister does end up unable to continue to exercise his functions, even temporarily, then he'll have to hope that Dominic Raab, who's the official number 2, is on the same page as him on those crucial questions.
In a rallying address, the Queen has told the nation it will overcome coronavirus by staying resolute in the face of self-isolation. She has thanked key workers, saying every hour of their work brings us closer to a return to more normal times. A former press secretary, Dickie Arbiter, said it was a very personal message.
Having experienced her own son, Prince Charles, having gone down with COVID-19, knows probably exactly how people feel. She did sympathise with those people who are grieving, people who are struggling financially, people who are struggling day to day.
Scotland's chief medical officer has resigned after being forced to admit she broke her own advice on 2 consecutive weekends to visit her second home. Having first apologised this afternoon during a joint news conference with the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, Dr. Catherine Calderwood said they'd since agreed that the justifiable focus on her behaviour risked becoming a distraction. The Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has warned outdoor exercising could be banned. A number of people have been pictured sunbathing in parks this weekend rather than going for a run or walk under the government's lockdown guidelines. Franklin Soplu-Chukwu, who works in the NHS, was out exercising this afternoon.
more people are coming out just to obviously enjoy the sun rather than to partake in physical activity. It's slightly selfish in a way because obviously it is for the nation, and if you can't stay indoors, it's important that you do. If you can't, then obviously it's understandable that you need to walk your dog or whatever. But coming out just for the sake of coming out is a bit selfish.
And a man who got lost while crossing from France into Spain to buy cheap cigarettes has been rescued by helicopter in the Pyrenees. He tried to cross the border on foot through the mountains after being stopped in his car at a checkpoint. On being brought back home, he was fined €135 for breaking France's lockdown regulations. BBC News.
I know a great many things you don't. Oh, dare I say this, Spitfire?
A coming-of-age story of betrayal and desire.
I won't forget you, Philip. I'll never forget anyone.
And I shall never forget you. I'm very fond of you, Maggie.
A tale of sibling love and bitterness.
I like Lucy better than you. I wish Lucy was my sister.
George Eliot's classic novel, narrated by Anna Maxwell Martin.
And above all, the great Floss, along which they wandered with a sense of travel.
The Mill on the Floss. This Monday to Friday morning at 10:45 on BBC Radio 4.
Well, it's time now for the film programme with Antonia Clark.
I'm just walking along the pebbled seafront in Hastings, looking at the sunlit, glimmering sea under a perfect blue sky. It is mid-March, and the country is poised on the lip of a lockdown, so we thought we'd come here while we still could to speak to Andrew Cotting, who is perhaps our most quietly influential avant-garde filmmaker. He's much visual artist as director. Since 1984, with films like Gallivant and This Our Still Life, he's demonstrated a very particular sensibility. Playful, serious, messy and poetic, forcefully autobiographical. His new film, The Whalebone Box, sees him travelling with, amongst others, his long-time collaborators, his daughter Eden, the writer Ian Sinclair, up through England to the Hebrides and to the Isle of Harris to return a box made from whalebone to a distant white beach.
I asked him where the whalebone came from. He said it came from a washed-up whale, possibly a blue whale. All sorts of ribs and vertebrae, along with rats and baleen, sacrificed after the whale had been smashed up as a result of a storm.
We've been here before and got lost. So Andrew left instructions. Must climb 18 steps. Specifically, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Up by the old pub. Looking for a green dotted line. He said he'd leave a sign. I think there might be a sign up there. Just climbing the steps of the old town behind the seafront. There is a sign. Antonia et al. Salut. Here's Andrew. Andrew? Andrew?
turn her over, she finds it difficult to turn on herself. When she lies on her kind of back, then it's difficult with her tongue, she chokes, and we turn her over, she sleeps. But she looks so beautiful, and it just seems an opportunity to connect some of these dreams that she's been looking at. So seems to resonate later on with this notion of romance, so that's why I kind of read it profiles and into one of the other dimensions.
But it just works perfectly. What I feel that takes place somewhere between the dark and the color. Tell me about working with
remains unfathomable, and I think after 32 years, it's a very important story. It's more about the relationship between me and the rest of people that come into my life, this kind of ever-growing family that ebbs and flows. It's the experience of it's the fact that when she's in the shop and we're working together, there's an dynamic from faraway land, we'll be dealing with this, hopefully maybe on one day, given the crisis living through, we need to be difficult. And actually, your question, I mean, even, it's more about her, I remember it doing something with her father, she was autistic, when she sees this with many things, I was on hospital, she couldn't realize, it would be hard even to decide she's out, she flees. It's like, she gets to elderly people and looking herself in the school.
And you get pleasure from her.
Yeah, she's my therapy, I'm her therapy, all the things and her, she's been traumatizing me. The reason the work remains so vibrant is because I can't really make work outside of it. When I'm away from home, everything shuts down. I tried it when I met Ivor and stuff. It's a very difficult situation for Layla to deal with. And so I think maybe in the wake of this, I realised the easiest way of continuing to make work is to fold into it more and more. And the fact that she knows it's to come on the table, to collage and respond so brilliantly to our time together and generates a plethora of stuff which I think it adds some power, something which is both unique and complicated. And I think maybe that's the answer to your question, that she remains live, but she's also complicated. And through my agency, through my collaborations with her, I think I can larger body work that is unlike any other work that is out there. And that's a true story. I can feed that into the to give her a voice, to actually that's because poetry is a very difficult for most people to understand. My sister, my brother, and help us understand it, but it's that the language is also unfounded. And it creates this enigma, this atmosphere in the film. And I think if you buy into that story, and it works as a drift poem, it works as more than just a narrative about what's going on.
She says, I love you inside out, I love your bones and your heart and your pride and the shape of your vocal. Are you imagining what I'm saying?
That's me to me. That's me. That's what I love about it. And without the participation, the core of that infuriating, restrictive, the thing that is evil, which is both joy and also incredibly burdened, is that paradox of poetry that I'm expressing. I'm reminding myself, I'm her, that this is evil. But I'm using a woman's voice, Helen Parris, who I collaborated with before, is a very close friend of Helen. And Helen will also say those kinds of things, not just to her partner, they also to me then. And it's a kind of nod towards that. That's what holds our lives together. When somebody says that, whether it be a lover or a member of family. So I'm using it as a method, rather than just me to her or her. I mean, I'd like to think that Eden would say to me, oh, but I love you. That's what she would say. She wouldn't articulate anything more than that. But it's short. It's very symbolic. But it has been incredibly joyful, despite the thing that is evil, the presence that's burdened. And in strange ways, she kind of continues to remind me that there's nothing wrong with the sugar. There's nothing wrong with the an approximation of getting things right. home has been so supportive all since Sulaiman. And without his belief in the fact that there are still people out there that want to go and see this kind of thing, which is a shoddy film in terms of cinema shit, that if you go spend 15 quid and you're going to be experiencing a lot of art. It's just brilliant that it's a reminder that there are other ways of making film. And fun, I know, because I live in that world, your average cinema goer, and I'm again very lucky that movies are streamed for the best part of the month, and people might stumble across what happened upon the work on box. And that kind of gives me hope and joy that I am privileged, that I am in this situation, position where I have a nerve, I have a body of work behind me, but sometimes I'm very fearful of people that don't have that opportunity, that luck.
Thank you, Andrew. Time for a musical interlude, a Neil Bryan series on the rejected film score. This week, it's A Place in the Sun made in 1951. High society colliding duly with ambitious blue collar, starring Elizabeth Taylor and Paul Gorey clipped at their most profoundly opportunities. And with music by Franz Waxman. Neil, today, one of my favourite films.
And one of my favourite stories, without any doubt. George Stevens was all set to make a great hit. It was going to be the first of his epic trilogy, as he saw it. Second one was Shane, third one was Child. And Franz Waxman had just come out of the triumphant run of Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard before he started working on Place in the Sun. Now, Sunset Boulevard is a really excellent because the story that comes out of it is less about what was actually done and more about what he created. So one of the things that gets us into the Waxman situation with Place in the Sun is that he chose a particular model in the way that he did Sunset Boulevard. He took the idea of the simple relationships and the world which it was as a beautiful, big, lush, romantic world which has begun to run out. But this was a really interesting idea for two reasons. One was that Waxman was beginning to show up in some in terms of the kind of music he was writing. The other is that what was changing in terms of time was the jazz that arrived with a big hit. Between the release of Sunset Boulevard and the release of Place in the Sun, the phenomenon of extended score for Three Color Desire had been out for the first time. So I thought Waxman was beginning to take this idea that he used and use it with Place in the Sun. Place in the Sun is a massive, beautiful, big road piece. But because it's a story of a man who was in love with a rich, beautiful woman, Elizabeth Taylor, that already has a relationship with a poor girl, which I went to school with, very poor. And the dark Waxman did say that he went in through a big, lush romance, and we were into a much darker, juicy world. So when you first hear the music, you hear this gorgeous
Hello there. With what's going on, it seems inevitable that the government will quickly have to start giving money away. Firstly, as ever, please kick that YouTube algorithm up the backside by giving this video a big fat like. And I'm always uploading new content, so please do check my YouTube channel daily. We're now at the stage that the government is having to take very swift and robust fiscal and monetary action in order to settle the nerves of the nation. And tonight, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, in another assured performance, announced at tonight's version of the now daily press conferences that he was putting a £330 billion package in place to keep business going. But as many point out, this is predominantly loans aimed at business, loans that will have to be paid back with interest, although that interest will be low. And some of it does consist of cash grants to help pay rents, i.e. protecting the landlords. There is also some mortgage relief available as well. But most of this is aimed at keeping the lights on by giving business loans to prevent them laying off staff. And although I'm no expert, I think that one of the priorities must be to not only keep as many businesses afloat as possible, but more importantly, to keep individual people as solvent as possible in the coming months. And just protecting businesses may not be enough. And the Chancellor did say that, if I understand it correctly, in doing whatever it takes to get through this, the next stage would be to try and secure incomes. But right now, people are not spending, so businesses and their owners aren't earning, meaning that as time goes on, they will find it harder to pay their staff, let alone themselves, even if government loans money to cover some of the fixed costs. And right now, some businesses and sole traders are struggling and are already facing dire times. They do not have the luxury of time. And once they can't pay the bills, the mortgage, the tax, the utility bills, etc., then it has a snowball effect. And that snowball effect could sweep up the public sector too. The vast majority of people are not wealthy enough to take this hit, nor are they insured sufficiently. And even if every one of them was insured to the hilt, I reckon payouts on the scale needed would bankrupt the insurers anyway. And the sort of scale we're talking about here is monumental. The credit crunch was a mere minor fringe warm-up act in comparison. Now in the US, the Federal Reserve has just announced that it's setting up a commercial paper funding facility to maintain the flow of credit to households and businesses. In a statement, the Fed said, "Commercial paper markets directly finance a wide range of economic activity, supplying credit and funding for auto loans and mortgages, as well as liquidity to meet the operational needs of a range of companies. By ensuring the smooth functioning of this market, particularly in times of strain, the Federal Reserve is providing credit that will support families, businesses and jobs across the economy. But that relies on people having the jobs and the money to take out the loans and repay them. And if people borrow just to keep afloat month to month, at some stage the chickens come home to roost."
Get online, save big, get happy with HostGainer.
If you are searching for the right keywords, you should try Keyword Magic Tool by SEMrush. Type in your topic and get an impressive list of keyword ideas. Pick and use real search queries to fit your business needs and build the most profitable SEO or PPC campaign. Keyword Magic Tool by SEMrush. Get started for free.
Ano usayo di?
Hence suggestions in the US that each person could be sent a check for $1,000. But how long would that last? In France, President Macron has stated that no business or person will suffer as he announced a €45 billion package and has even suggested nationalising stricken companies. And the 19 Eurozone ministers have agreed on a €65 billion package. Now when the UK Chancellor Rishi Sunak stood up and delivered the budget just a few short days ago, it sounded like the right sort of response. But things have moved on extremely quickly, as we look at not days, not weeks, not just months, but maybe over a year to get over this.
So you see me miss call?
No company could survive that. And even today's announcement by the Chancellor could become as chaff in the wind in the face of global events. There is only one entity big and powerful enough to shoulder the costs, and that is the government in conjunction with the Bank of England and the banking sector. As Tom Harris says in the Telegraph about the current situation, there is no alternative. We are all socialists now. And does that mean just giving money away? But there are three basic questions to answer.
Okay.
Where's the money to come from? Who gets the money? Who will giving that money take?
So I make you.
So where's the money to
will
come
call?
from? Big question. Because the country is already circa 1.7 trillion or more in debt. And to borrow more, we'd need to issue more gilts. And our annual deficit would have to rise very significantly from the 1.8% of GDP that was recorded at the end of the 2018-19 financial year. And I've heard it mooted that the percentage deficit to GDP would have to be in the region of 20% of GDP, equivalent to annual borrowing rising from £38.7 billion to £430 billion.
Yeah, so we call you 1 o'clock. If you call any call.
Cue defibrillators for the Tories.
If you get T-post, you get her. If you don't get her,
presumably the Bank of England will engage in quantitative easing by purchasing a load of those gilts with money it printed in one of its vaults, so as to maintain market liquidity, exactly as it did back in the Great Recession. And if all else fails, I suppose the Weimar Republic-style money printers could be put on full output, if that's what it would take. But that does not help the ordinary Jills and Joes out there, does it?
Hello?
As jobs and incomes dries up, they need a way of paying the bills, and that takes money in their bank accounts, or for someone else to pick up the tab. But if we're going to do this, who does get the money? Everyone, or only those that really need it? And who's going to decide? How long would that decision take? What are the criteria? Do people have to prove they're looking for a job? Etc., etc., etc. The easiest and simplest way would be some sort of universal non-assessed system. But that would mean everyone, including millionaires and front-bench MPs, getting free money too. Who gets this so-called helicopter money would prove a very emotive issue. And then the question is, how do we get the money to the people? Well, it has been suggested that the government just gives loads of money to the utility companies for a few months, so the rest of us don't get a bill. Now that's the water, gas and electricity sorted. I wonder if Sky and Netflix would qualify as utility.
So, you have a cool idea, but maybe you don't know what to do with it. Easy. First things first, you need a website.
It is. The government could also shoulder the TV license for a while too. And then we come to look over our heads, the mortgages and rents. Anyone who falls behind with those investments will find it extremely hard, next to impossible, to catch up. So does the government pick up that tab too? And how about the food on our plates? And other essentials like keeping the car on the road? Would all that require, say, £1,000 a month going into everyone's bank account for a few months? A citizen's wage. The one thing about that is that people would then be tempted to go out and spend it. Now the government would want you to spend it to keep the economy ticking along, but the going out bit might be a little problematic. And how would you then wean people off of it when all these problems have passed?
So what you don't understand now?
Would it become permanent? The Chancellor could also increase income tax rates so that those with income do not see any direct benefit from these measures. But
So
I'm
he
not
says,
sure
I
those
mean, send that to
affected
me.
would be very
How does he
happy with
know
that
that nothing?
particular outcome as they drove to work knowing others were being paid to stay at home.
Well, how come you know that nothing?
In fact, not doing so might encourage people to go out and seek work on top of the citizens' wage,
So you just said I know you know
further
that
bolstering the economy.
But
Now, I'm not saying that any of this is coming, but it does indicate some of the thought processes that have to be gone through during these difficult days. And many people might look at some of the stuff I've outlined and say it's just pure socialism, would never do it.
I don't sabi anything in the law. Need not dig for
But it
that.
would be a leap to go from assisting businesses employing people
Me know
to helping people
I don't
with what some would see
I don't sabi
as
the
a massive
they will just sabi
handout.
am for
Anyway, if
for
you want to hear more from me, please don't forget to
me
subscribe
brain.
and also press
I
that
know
little
they
bell
learn
so you don't get any
I know they learn something.
notifications.
I know they learn something for let club me brain. I they learn something for let
With my mug on it.
I know they give me knowledge
So what do you think about
to
all
improve
of
my
this?
behavior.
Please share and
We learn
comment.
something
and
about give
thank
knowledge
you
for give
watching.
understanding. I know the implementer. Me well I don't say me not supposed to know implement something. I know for implement I know useful to me. No. I know you learn something I know implement. Which are
I'm
the
speaking
one?
to you at what I know is an increasingly challenging time.
Because
A time of
you
disruption
know
of the
necessary
life
for
of our
learn,
country.
we learn something for implementer for sabi implementer. What you know they mean? For implement? A big year talk something better. What you know they mean? For put things into practice, I know they mean. For put things into practice, no they mean. Well, I don't know that little thing. Now you is changed too. Now you difficult for. Now you know you some. You some. You find that thing will be difficult for you at all. Yeah, Susan say no dey in me. See, you know dey in me. It you know dey in me. What else say now? Are you friend? Are you party say now? Who's one party party? Who's one party the way say now? Okay. I see you. YouTube? Oh, so now YouTube now they go learn. I don't know they go learn. Now YouTube now they go learn. Are you Facebook? Two sites only. Yeah, what is showing that good for now? Okay. Are they you can go find the nakedness? Oh, in fact now I see. I said I didn't cite where they show the nakedness. Go inside in the all in Lombana. Facebook for Lombana, all inside in the. Whose phone? I don't say I know they put phone. I know they put. I need left them picture in there. I get his album and I get them picture in here. My phone. The phone can lose at any time. So say I can left and send somebody go tamper with her. Not there for us, let person go tamper with her. Because now nothing the way they hide. Everything from way waiting safe. This when I make them school then chat talk. When I make them chat talk. Come on, you get past almost on the chat talk with you all about. They talk so people in the CU people in the CU which it well you know they know what you talk, but in the CU side they really talk because some scramble. They want to scramble like it's secure because unless you get the software you're not going to go for pack and back together. So in that case what you make it ask me? Why you ask me? I say why you for ask me now? Why you ask me? Oh yeah. I don't know if see oh yeah. I need to put picture. The picture I need to put that side. In fact I need to put picture safe in the cloud. Because one TV Facebook they do because I get 6 computers. I get iPad and my phone. Facebook they compromise everything. Within in my phone, they put on my iPad, they put on my iPad because iPad not so they all get the same. They not get the same operating system. Right. But now safe well anyway iPad we don't try for make Android and this way itself interact with each other. Facebook they put on all me and they put on all me laptop. So what I don't do, I don't put all pictures no myself. Anything very sensitive. I get me waiting me I get me disc. I get me external disc. I get 2 external discs. Each one na 1 terabyte. Each one 1 terabyte. 1 terabyte. That is enough. It's enough for maintain the file of the one whole Sarah ministry. All in Sarah ministry, then they can put in file. It still gets space because the old one, the first one and old one, you don't throw by them. One set now be 1 terabyte, and I buy another one. We send a 1 terabyte. So the one in the no dinner the another put even reference safe na me phone or waiting. Then I renting and The only thing is that the only thing I therefore make sure I keep nobody notifying. So everyone is needing a safe place. So when you tell me I use file D, I just put on my laptop. You know, I use the file and I pull up. So if I pull the file come out, even if you go meet and they say it's not go for say, you let's see the image, you know, the icon you see, but you know they go into the file because you tick the icon you say file is not everything content is not available. Because now everything in the compromise on the internet. Everything in the compromise. So the best thing is that as soon as people like anyway people don't use that because for me to have the open bank. We get sensitive data they won't really left. If you go to me the hack them data then they so you get sensitive, you get exclusive external storage. So you know they put as part of your system at all. If you want something you can go pull and then you go come back. So nothing all the way they left now. Although they try for improve the security, because now they get some powerful security websites. You know, that's a security file. We know they will for that is be with you they talk. The people sleep. You sleep. The first lady they wait for you. You sleep. You can talk. Yeah. So you lock down now after tomorrow. He left one day. So after tomorrow now he left one day. Oh dear. So the lockdown today and then the first day. So they don't allow you to let you go out. Can I make you able for talk? So what do you do? What do you do? I don't so because he's speaking all the I will say the merciful all day. You get people where you can just send them and say you go do that day for me, so inside this style they come out. I call you for almost o'clock. You don't answer till almost o'clock. Yeah. I get you. Don't pass. Man will go no way. Go. I get you. I said I get you. Hello? 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 Oh dear. Hello? You okay now?